Yummers.
Protective shield! Protective shield! Protective shield!
Hello. I should have realized that upon the chat actually working, that indicated it wasn't actually a members only stream. But you know what? I'm just gonna rock it. Hi. Welcome to the weekly reading stream where it's normally members only and then I make it public for everyone after the fact. But this week I made it members only and then it didn't save and then I changed the time and then it didn't save and then now here we are. Hello, everyone. So yeah, you can get a experience of what it's like to be a member, I guess. Not like it's much different from normal. Hey, Kirby. Hey, Coyd. Hey, Floof. Hey, Kay. Hey, Dreek. Scoop. Gawk Bay. Draconic. You can go out and you can... No. Like, if I made it a public stream, I'm just going to keep it a public stream, right? If this was, like, sensitive information, if this was stuff that I was trying to keep private, then yeah, I would probably swap it to members. But I'm going to make it public anyway, right? I'm going to make it a stream that is... Oh, I need to go live chat. I forgot. I'm going to make it a stream that's publicly accessible anyway. So there's no point in me making it members only if I already accidentally announced it as public, because that's just more chat. That's more people. That's more folks reading. Yeah, I made a mistake and I own up to it. And I'm not going to like sit here and say like, oh, you're not welcome here. If you showed up, that means that you care enough to show up. So I would prefer to reward that behavior. Hey, Depresso, but I'm also a Patreon member. Someone asked last week if I could set it up so that you could be on stream as either a Patreon member or a YouTube member. And I haven't had time. And I keep saying I'm going to do it. And then I keep not doing it because I keep forgetting. Frankly, I just keep not remembering until the time comes. Yes, liking the video does help. Thank you very much. GigaChad is a well, like, I have artwork of me as a GigaChad. And like it shows me fully topless, but without unmentionables. So like that's just like the GigaChad meme. That's just me presented in a different way. Arrow for Gores, exactly. So, how many of you have not kept up with The King in Yellow? How many of you, this is your first time listening in to us reading through The King in Yellow? How many of you don't know what The King in Yellow even is? Because this is a short story anthology collection of 10 stories, and we are currently on story number 6 of 10. We have read through The Repair of Reputations, which I thought was pretty all right, but I mean, I liked it on a meta level of how it presented the story more than I actually liked the story itself. The Mask is probably my favorite out of all of them. I loved The Mask. It was like 19th century polycule. It was so good. legitimate chemistry between the characters. Court of the Dragon, I didn't like. Straight up, I just did not think it was a good story. The Yellow Sign was one that I also really enjoyed. Again, this was one that was more focused on romance. It was more focused on character, and it came across much more modern. It came across much more organic, I'll say. And then the Demoiselle D, I mean, I was clowning on it for how much of a simp the main character was. But at the same time, like, I don't think it was poorly written. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. And now we're on Prophet's Paradise, number 6. No King in Yellow, first time here. Awesome. This is my first time, and I might join the Patreon for more. Well, okay, so on the Patreon, all I do right now, and I wanted to do this before, I wanted to do more before, and then I got busy, and then I never picked it back up. Over on Patreon, all I do right now is make a publicly accessible free poll for every week, which actually just went live yesterday because we just had a Lancer video yesterday, voting on which Lancer frame I cover next. The reason my Lancer frames are all over the place is because I give you one IPSN, one SSC, one Horus, one HA, and I say you get to vote on which one comes next. And right now, I think we're like 3/4 of the way through the entire roster of every frame up to date. And I want to say we've done basically all but like 2. We've done like all, or no, I was going to say HA seems to be one of the ones we've done the most. I think it was actually IPSN. But yeah, so right now I'm not doing like Patreon exclusive stuff. So don't join the Patreon trying to get exclusive content. Join the Patreon because you want to support the channel. And my goal is that in the next like 10 days, I will upload a TTRPG to Patreon. And at the end of the year, for the holidays, at the turn of the year, once it's been a month, I will make it public. And the goal will be that I made a TTRPG that I'll just do another pass over the next 10 days. And I will upload that in 10 days. Start of December. End of December, I make it public. But up until that point, on the community, I would request that some people playtest it. That we get some games running and see how it works and see like, oh, well, the blood, sweat, and tears system is fun, but it doesn't actually help the game progress or anything, or like the injury system is really too forgiving. Like, that's the kind of stuff. I do love clowning on simps. The history of humanity is a story of class struggle between the mem bourgeoisie and the proletariat subscribers. So that's the thing. Like, I'm very open about this. The reason I don't do much on Patreon, the reason I make my member streams public, and I only started doing member streams like 2 months ago, like a month and a half ago, is because I don't want there to be this divide where you think I like you more if you pay me. I don't want there to be this divide where the best chance for me to read your comment is for you to pay me. Obviously, I understand that, like Supas, for instance, I'm definitely going to get around to, right? I will make an effort to stop what I'm doing to respond to a super chat, even if it's unrelated to the current conversation, because that is paid for it. Similarly, like with a membership or subscription or bits, those are things that I'll make an effort to go for, but not because I don't care if you don't pay, because I understand not everyone can pay. Also, I'm the sort of person that I really don't pay content creators too much because I'm very frugal, and that's not something that I can really do, but I support them, I lurk, I comment, whatever, or not really comment, I'm a lurker. Anyway, but my point is, like, don't feel like you have to support the channel. I would love it. It would make my life easier, but you will not be higher status in the community as a result of that. Trying to be welcoming as well? Yeah, I'm trying to be welcoming as well. I understand that folks, like, they might tune into stream or watch, like, TTRPG videos to distract from the fact that they're literally, like, not making enough to pay rent. So I'm not going to sit here and tell them they're only valuable if they can pay me money, right? Don't you colon 3 at me. Don't you colon 3 at me. Okay, so we are in story 6 of 10. The goal for today is to run through Prophet's Paradise, which is like 10 pages. The Street of the Four Winds, which is like 20 pages. And then the Street of the First Shell is like another 40, 50 pages, so I'll probably not do that one today. But I'm not driven to fin dumbing yet. I mean, I didn't say I'm not... I I didn't say that I will offend them. I said I don't want my community to feel unwelcome. Understood, diverting the funds. Mwahaha. Well, enjoy, Floof. A prophet's paradise. If but the vine and love abjuring band are in the prophet's paradise to stand, alack, I doubt the prophet's paradise were empty as the hollow of one's hand. Bars. Absolute fire. The studio. He smiled, saying, seek her through the world. I said, why tell me of this? My world is here, between these walls and the sheets of glass above, here among gilded flagons and dull jeweled arms, tarnished frames and canvases, black chests and high-backed chairs, quaintly carved and stained in blue and gold. For whom do you wait? He said, and I answered, when she comes, I shall know her. On my hearth a tongue of flame whispered secrets to the whitening ash. In the street below I heard footsteps, a voice, and a song. For who then do you wait? He said, and I answered, I shall know her. Footsteps, a voice, and a song in the streets below, and I knew the song, but neither the steps nor the voice. Fool, he cried, the song is the same, the voice and steps have but changed with years. On the hearth, a tongue of flame whispered above the whitening ashes. Wait no more, they have passed, the steps and the voice in the street below. Then he smiled, saying, for whom do you wait? Seek her throughout the world. I answered, my world is here between these walls and the sheet of glass above, here among gilded flagons and dull jeweled arms, tarnished frames and canvases, black chests and high-backed chairs, quaintly carved and stained in blue and gold. Weird start, I gotta say. I don't really like Findom myself. I prefer other types of toms. Listen. We're not gonna get into that here. Also, fair warning, this is a reading stream, so while I do go on tangents, while I do like talk with the community, mostly, and this is in part because it's a member stream and the viewership and engagement tends to be lower because folks are just kind of vibing, I will focus primarily on the book, so please don't try and we're not going to do a Q&A section, at least not until the end. Don't try and start a conversation to interrupt the flow. We're going to focus on this, so just heads up with that. The Phantom. The phantom of the past would go no further. If it is true, she sighed, that you find in me a friend, let us turn back together. You will forget here under the summer sky. I held her close, pleading, caressing. I seized her, white with anger, but she resisted. If it is true, she sighed, that you find in me a friend, let us turn back together. The phantom of the past would go no further. The Sacrifice. I went into a field of flowers, whose petals are whiter than snow, and whose hearts are pure gold. Far afield a woman cried, I have killed him I loved! And from a jar she poured blood upon the flowers, whose petals are whiter than snow, and whose hearts are pure gold. Far afield I followed, and on the jar I read 1,000 names, while from within the fresh blood bubbled to the brim. I have killed him I loved, she cried. The world's athirst, now let it drink! She passed. And far afield I watched her pouring blood upon the flowers, whose petals are whiter than the snow, and whose hearts are pure gold. Destiny. I came to the bridge, which few may pass. Pass! Cried the keeper, but I laughed, saying, there is time, and he smiled and shut the gates. To the bridge which few may pass came young and old. All were refused. Idly I stood and counted them, until, wearied of their noise and lamentations, I came again to the bridge, which few may pass. Those in the throng about the gates shrieked out, he comes too late! But I laughed, saying, there is time. Pass! Cried the keeper as I entered, then smiled and shut the gates. The throng. There, where the throng was thickest in the street, I stood with Pierrot. There, where the throng was thickest in the street, I stood with Pierrot. All eyes were turned on me. What are they laughing at? I asked, but he grinned, dusting the chalk from my black cloak. I cannot see it. It must be droll. Perhaps an honest thief. All eyes were turned on me. He has robbed you of your purse, they laughed. My purse, I cried. Pierrot, help, it is a thief. They laughed. He has robbed you of your purse. Then Truth stepped out holding a mirror. If he is an honest thief, cried Truth, Pierrot shall find with him this mirror. But he only grinned, dusting the chalk from my black cloak. You see, he said, Truth is an honest thief. She brings you back your mirror. All eyes were turned on me. Arrest Truth, I cried, forgetting it was not a mirror but a purse I lost, standing with Pierrot there where the throng was thickest in the street. The jester. Was she fair? I asked, but he only chuckled, listening to the bells jingling on his cap. Stabbed, he tittered. Think of the long journey, the days of peril, the dreadful nights. Think how he wandered for her sake year after year through hostile lands, learning for kith and kin, yearning for her. Stabbed, he tittered, listening to the bells jingling on his cap. Was she fair? I asked, but he only snarled, muttering to the bells jingling on his cap. She kissed him at the gate, he tittered, but in the hall his brother's welcome touched his heart. Was she fair? I asked. Stabbed, he chuckled. Think of the long journey, the days of peril, the dreadful nights. Think how he wandered for her sake year after year through hostile lands, yearning for kith and kin, yearning for her. She kissed him at the gate, but in the hall his brother's welcome touched his heart. Was she fair? I asked, but he only snarled, listening to the bells jingling in his cap. The green room. The clown turned his powdered face to the mirror. If to be fair is to be beautiful, he said. Who can compare with me in my white mask? Who can compare with him in his white mask? I asked of Death beside me. Who can compare with me? Said Death, for I am paler still. You are very beautiful, sighed the clown, turning his powdered face to the mirror, from the mirror. The love test. If it is true that you love, said Love, then wait no longer. Give her these jewels which would dishonor her, and so dishonor you in loving one dishonored. If it is true that you love, said Love, then wait no longer. I took the jewels and went to her, and she trod upon them, sobbing, Teach me to wait, I love you! Then wait, if it is true, said Love. Okay, so, not a fan of this one. Oh, is Pirat is a Commedia dell'arte character? Oh, I didn't know that. Because, like, so the King in Yellow, I don't think Chambers is French. How do I click on who you are? I don't know how to find your wiki. Chambers William? No, that's a book. Chambers William. He wasn't French, was he? Because this whole thing revolves around France, right? He studied in Paris. Got it. Okay, so he had time in France. The entirety of the King of Yellow is related to France, the French language. I don't know if it was originally written in French. If it was, this could be a translation thing. This struck me as a collection of poems. And I'm not gonna lie, I did not connect with it. Full stop. He started art in France, I think, hence all those American artists studying in France. Yeah. So, I liked this one less than Court and the Dragon. I liked this one less than Court and the Dragon, I'm not gonna lie. Also, hey kid, welcome on in. When Paris will be engulfed, will reemerge the city of East. Oh, that's important. That's good to know. I was lost too. That's why I wasn't really making tangents, because I picked up very quickly that this was a situation where repetition, poetry, rhyme was all very important. For instance, like with Destiny, I came to a bridge which you may pass. Pass, said the keeper, but I laughed, there is time, and he shut the gates, and then he comes too late, there is time, pass, and then he shut the gates. So what I'm gathering is that this is all related to the MC, the main character. The title is Prophet's Paradise. This is all related to he lost a love. I'm guessing that he was in love with someone and or like was with her or whatever. And then she died. Or maybe he died? I don't know. What I gathered from this is like the kind of mourning, the grieving of someone who lost a loved one and is going through life. And after being confronted time and time again, just like, hey, do you want to go after your loved one? Do you want to follow her? Do you want to be with her? He says, no, I want to live. I want to wait. And then eventually he does die and then he's with her, right? That's what I got. Because all of this relates around death. All of this relates around love. All of this relates around being barred from somewhere, like with the gate. Was she fair stabbed? Think of the long journey, the days of peril, the dreadful night. Think of how he wandered for her sake year after year through hostile lands, yearning for kith and kin, yearning for her. So, like, what I've gathered is that the MC main character is basically like this is all an analogy for what it's like to live after losing someone, but I don't know if that's right. And I don't even know if that's what it was, if it's done well, because whilst the actual prose of this is quite, well, it's almost poetic prose. On my hearth, a tongue of flame whispered secrets to the whitening ash. That's a good line. I like that. And then literally it starts whispering to the main character. Yeah, I think that was kind of the point. I mean, if it's the sort of deal where it's, oh, this is meant to be disjointed and make you as a reader confused and lost, like, because, like, symbolism, sure, that can work. I feel it didn't work here. So I'm just gonna move on. That took like 10 minutes, so who knows? I'm not gonna read this French. I know a little bit of French. So the Street of the Four Winds. So like, fermete a demi. So it means close the. It's not eyes, is it? Like I'm not gonna try. With all due respect. By the way, unrelated, but I want to note something about Mr. Scott, the artist who used to be in France from the Yellow Sign. There was a Mr. Jack Scott in The Mask. Yeah, and there was also what's it? The Yellow Sign. Cousteau? Was it? There was a name drop of a character with a capital C name, I think in the Yellow Sign, that I think was the name of the character from Repair of Reputations. So I think that I've heard that the first couple are all interrelated, at least in like the same universe kind of deal, but none of them follow the same story. Boris from The Mask was mentioned as the sculptor of the Fates, and there you go. There's where it is. So like, there's different interconnectivities in this, aside from just the King in Yellow, which actually. Prophet's Paradise and Demoiselle. Yeah, there's no mention of the King in Yellow in either of these past two stories. Because the thing about the King in Yellow is this is an anthology series about a bunch of different stories all related to the King in Yellow, the play, the fictional play. And Repair of Reputations deals with it. Mask does. Court of the Dragon does. Yellow Sign does. Or Court of the Dragon doesn't. Does it? Oh. For I'd been reading the King in Yellow. Yes. So the first four all relate to that play. The last six don't. I mean, it does have Hastur, but literally, when Hastur showed up in Demoiselle, I was just like, oh, like the King in Yellow? And then no, he was just a dude. He was just a dude named Hastur, and I was like, oh, okay. Okay, well, let's keep going. It felt like a literary equivalent of a fever dream, perhaps even the fever dream the MC of Masks had while in a fever. I mean, and that's the thing, like, Prophet's Paradise, I'm not disparaging it because I didn't understand it. I recognize that was intentional. I feel it didn't land for me. That's my critique, right? I'm not saying that it was poorly written, per se. I'm saying I feel the execution was not proper. To me. But maybe I'm not an 1890s reader, right? Maybe I didn't read far in enough to it. Maybe I didn't have context. Maybe I am just stupid. I don't know. But I didn't connect with it in the same way I've connected with some of the other stories from here. And that's just a taste thing, right? That's just a preference thing. Street of the Four Winds. The animal paused on the threshold, interrogative, alert, ready for flight if necessary. Severin laid down his pallet and held out a hand in welcome. The cat remained motionless, her yellow eyes fastened upon Severin. "Puss," he said in his low, pleasant voice. "Come in." The tip of her tail twitched uncertainly. "Come in," he said again. Apparently, she found his voice reassuring, for she slowly settled upon all fours, her eyes still fastened upon him, her tail tucked away under her gaunt flanks. He rose from his easel smiling. Another artist! Oh my gosh. She eyed him quietly, and when he walked towards her, she watched him bend above her without a wince. Her eyes followed his hand until it touched her head. Then she uttered a ragged mew. Meow for me. You have to like make this verisimilitude. Meow in chat for me. But make it ragged. Make it a ragged mew like you're a stray cat being pet. It had long been Severn's custom to converse with animals, probably because he lived so much alone. And now he said, "What's the matter, puss?" Her timid eyes sought his. "I understand," he said gently. "You shall have it at once." Then, moving quietly, he busied himself with the duties of a host, rinsed a saucer, filled it with the rest of the milk from the bottle on the windowsill, and kneeling down, crumbled a roll into the hollow of his hand. The creature rose and crept towards the saucer. With the handle of a palette knife, he stirred the crumbs and milk together and stepped back as she thrust her nose into the mess. He watched her in silence. From time to time, the saucer clinked upon the tiled floor as she reached for a morsel on the rim, and at last the bread was all gone, and her purple tongue traveled over every unlicked spot until the saucer shone like polished marble. Then she sat up, and coolly turning her back to him, began her ablutions. Ablutions? Ablutions. "Keep it up." That Severn keep it up, said Severn, much interested. "You need it." Oh, she's going to the bathroom. She flattened one ear, but neither turned nor interrupted her toilet. As the grime was slowly removed, Severn observed that nature had intended for her to be a white cat. Her fur had disappeared in patches from disease or the chances of war. Her tail was bony, her spine sharp. But what charms she had were becoming apparent under vigorous licking, and he waited until she had finished before reopening the conversation. When at last she closed her eyes and folded her forepaws under her breast, he began again very gently. "Puss, tell me your troubles." This man is just a druid. I'm not going to take any other criticism. At the sound of his voice, she broke into a harsh rumbling, which he recognized as an attempt to purr. He bent over to rub her cheek, and she mewed again, an amiable, inquiring little mew, to which he replied, "Certainly, you are great improved, and when your recovery your plumage you shall be a gorgeous bird." "No, she's a cat, you silly." Much flattered, she stood up and marched around his legs, pushing her head between them and making pleased remarks, to which he responded with grave politeness. "Now what sent you here?" he said. "Here into the streets of the Four Winds, and up 5 flights to the very door where you would be welcome. What was it that prevented your mediated flight when I turned from my canvas to encounter your yellow eyes? Are you a Latin Quarter cat, as I am a Latin Quarter man? And why do you wear a rose-colored flowered garter belt buckled above your neck?" The cat had climbed into his lap and now sat purring as he passed his hand over her thin coat. "Excuse me," he continued in lazy, soothing tones, harmonizing with her purring, "if I seem indelicate, but I cannot help musing on this rose-colored garter, flowered so quaintly and fastened with a silver clasp. For the clasp is silver. I can see the mint mark on the edge, as it is prescribed by the law of the French Republic. Now why is this garter woven of rose silk and delicately embroidered? Why is this silken garter with its silver clasp around your famished throat? Am I indiscreet when I inquire if its owner is your owner? Is she some aged dame, living in memory of youthful vanities, fond, doting on you, decorating you with her intimate personal attire?" Oh! I didn't realize that's what they meant. Rose-colored garter, like a garter belt? Is that what they mean? Oh, I guess I walked in on Arrow Deep. Yes, Gravitas, I am currently reading the King Yellow, and this cat, this stray, famished, starving, bony, hairless cat has intimate attire as a collar. "The circumference of the garter would suggest that for your neck is thin and the garter fits you. But then again, I notice most things, that this garter is incapable of being much enlarged. These small silver-rimmed eyelets, of which I count 5, are proof of that. And now I observe that the 5th eyelet is worn out, as though the tongue of the clasp were accustomed to lie there. That seems to argue a well-rounded form." He really said, based on how this is constructed and the wear and tear of it, your owner thick, hit me up. A garter, the part that goes around the leg thigh, not the garter belt. So like a thigh high? Like, I'm unfamiliar. Arrow Deep, aka Barrow, is someone putting underwear on their cat. Apparently it's like a garter as a collar. The cat curled her toes in contentment. The street was very still outside. Oh, I thought it was reaffirming the fact that the street was outside and the street had not also come in, not that the street was still while outside. I can't. Why do I read? Why do I attempt to read when it is so clearly out of my realm of competency? He murmured on. Why should your mistress decorate you with an article most necessary to her at all times? Anyway, at most times. How did she come to slip this bit of silk and silver about your neck? Was it the caprice of a moment? When you, before you had lost your pristine plumpness, marched singing into her bedroom to bid her good morning? Of course, and she sat up among the pillows, her coiled hair tumbling to her shoulders, as you sprang upon the bed purring, Good day, my lady. Oh, it is very easy to understand. He yawned, resting his head on the back of the chair. Now I'm yawning and stretching. The cat still purred, tightening and relaxing her padded claws over his knee. Shall I tell you all about her, cat? She's very beautiful, your mistress, he murmured drowsily, and her hair is heavy as burnished gold. If I could paint her, not on a canvas. Did he just make a comment about painting her, like... Chambers, my man! I could paint her, not on canvas, for I should need shades and tones and hues and dyes more splendid than the iris of a splendid rainbow. Okay, maybe not, my man. That's not where I thought that was going. I thought you were gonna paint it all white. I could paint her with my closed eyes, for in dreams alone can such colors as I need be found. For her eyes, I must have azure for skies untroubled by a cloud, the skies of a dreamland. For her lips, roses from the palaces of a slumberland, and for her brow, snowdrifts from mountain which tower in fantastic pinnacles to the moon. Oh, much higher than our moon here, the crystal moons of dreamland. She is very beautiful, your mistress. The words died on his lips, and his eyelids drooped. The cat, too, was asleep, her cheek turned upon her wasted flank, her paws relaxed and limp. Okay, so this guy's like kind of an incel, I'm not gonna lie. His first assumption when he sees a garter on a cat is, wow, shoddy must be thick and hot. And I don't know if I agree with that. Independent of her personal attractiveness, even independent of her physical aesthetics, like she can wear very nice clothing, and or this could have just been a stray cat that accidentally got in someone's laundry, because remember, they didn't have washing drying machines. They just hung them up. Maybe it fell on the cat and the cat got stuck with it. Maybe garter belts are named after garters but as belts instead of tight rings. It's a ring of fabric that holds up the stocking, then the garter belt. Oh, got it. It is fortunate, said Severin, sitting up and stretching, that we have tided over the dinner hour, for I have nothing to offer you for supper but what may be purchased with 1 silver franc. The cat on his knee rose, arched her back, yawned, and looked up at him. What shall it be? A roast chicken with salad? No? Possibly you prefer beef, of course, and I shall try an egg and some white bread. Now for the wines. Milk for you? Good. I shall take a little water, fresh from the wood, with a motion towards the bucket in the sink. He put on his hat and left the room. The cat followed to the door, and after he closed it behind him, she settled down, smelling at the cracks, cocking one ear at every creak from this crazy old building. The door below opened and shut. Cat looked serious, for a moment doubtful, and her ears flattened in nervous expectation. Presently, she rose with a jerk of her tail and started on a noiseless tour of the studio. She sneezed at a pot of turpentine, hastily retreating to the table, which she presently mounted, and having satisfied her curiosity concerning a roll of red modeling wax, returned to the door and sat down with her eyes on the crack over the threshold. She then lifted her voice in a thin plaint. When Severin returned, he looked grave, but the cat, joyous and demonstrative, marched around him, rubbing her gaunt body against his legs, driving her head enthusiastically into his hand, and purring until her voice mounted to a squeal. He placed a bit of meat, wrapped in a brown paper, upon the table, and with a penknife, cut it into shreds. The milk he took from a bottle which had served for medicine, and poured it into a saucer on the hearth. The cat crouched before it, purring and lapping at the same time. That's the voice that Arrow uses whenever we play Rivals. Yeah, that's my Valorant E-boy voice. Who up, kinging the yellow? Hey, a driver. Sadly, it doesn't do that. I'm too small. Why am I too small? The voice Arrow uses when they pin you against the wall. Rory, I could pin you easily. Just because I'm shorter than you doesn't mean that I can't pin you. I thought you were making a joke about content creator size, which would be very funny. But no, you're just making a joke about my height. Have you never seen the memes of like how to talk to short people? I'm above average height. I know how that works from the other side. You're also like half my weight. Nah, I'd win. I think that at that point it just becomes a wrestling contest. I'd win. He cooked his egg and ate it with a slice of bread, watching her busy with the shredded meat, and when he had finished and had filled and emptied a cup of water from the bucket in the sink, he sat down, taking her into his lap, where she at once curled up and began her toilet. On his lap? Ew! He began to speak again, touching her caressingly at times by way of emphasis.
Cat, I found out where your mistress lives. It is not very far away. It is here, under the same leaky roof, but in the north wing, which I suppose was uninhabited. My janitor tells me this. By chance, he is almost sober this evening. The butcher on the Rue de Seine, where I bought your meat, knows you, and old Cabane the baker identified you with needless sarcasm. They tell me hard tales of your mistress, which I shall not believe. They say she is idle and vain and pleasure-loving. They say she is harebrained and reckless. The little sculptor on the ground floor, who was buying rolls from old Cabane, spoke to me tonight for the first time, although we've always bowed to each other. He said she was very good and very beautiful. He had only seen her once and does not know her name. I thanked him. I don't know why I thanked him so warmly. Cabane said, "Into this cursed street of the Four Winds. The Four Winds blow all things evil." The sculptor looked confused, but when he went out for his rolls, he said to me, I am sure, monsieur, that she is as good as she is beautiful." The cat had finished her toilet and now, springing softly on the floor, went to the door and sniffed. He knelt beside her and unclasped the garter, held it for a moment in his hands. After a while, he said, "There's a name engraved upon the silver clasp beneath the buckle. It is a pretty name. Sylvia Elvin. She's just an elf. She's just straight up an elf." How to talk to short people, Arrow putting their high heels into the wall next to Rory's head. I don't think I'm that flexible. I don't think I can do the eye pose, like cabedon with your leg. By chance, he's almost sober this evening. Listen, Chambers is surprisingly a really funny writer. There have been a good couple lines like that, where it's just like, he was almost sober this evening. Cabane the baker identified you with needless sarcasm. Like, these characters are so catty. It's so good. Marbling is insane. I know. That's a wild thing to say. Sylvia is a woman's name. Elvin is the name of a town.
Elvin? Is that where all the elves are? Sorry, that's actually where the halflings are. Really weird confusion that everyone gets messed up by.
In Paris, in this quarter above all, is the Street of the Four Winds. Names are worn and put away as the fashions change with the seasons. I know the little town of Elvin, for there I met Fate face to face, and Fate was unkind. But do you know that in Elvin, Fate has another name, and that name was Sylvia?
So it's a chosen name. So we have a very attractive, like, beautiful trans woman who lost her garter in like 1890s. And everyone thinks that she's evil because she's trans, but really she's just a sculptor who happens to also be an elf. I think that we're making the headcanon here. I should note that Sylvia was the name of Mr. Scott's lost love from the... Gokbe, thank you. I love this. I love having additional context that I miss. He replaced the garter and stood up, looking down at the cat crouched before the closed door.
The name of Elvin has a charm for me. It tells me of meadows and clear rivers. The name of Sylvia troubles me like perfume from dead flowers.
The cat mewed.
Yes, yes, he said soothingly. I will take you back. Your Sylvia is not my Sylvia. The world is wide and Elvin is not unknown. Yet, in the darkness and filth of poorer Paris, in the sad shadows in this ancient house, these names are very pleasant to me.
He lifted her in his arms and strode through the silent corridors to the stairs, down 5 flights and into the moonlit court, past the little sculptor's den, and then again, in at the gate of the north wing and up the worm-eaten stairs he passed until he came to a closed door. When he had stood knocking for a long time, something moved behind the door. It opened and he went in. Why'd you enter this woman's home? The room was dark, and he crossed the threshold. The cat sprang from his arms into the shadows. He listened but heard nothing. The silence was oppressive, and he struck a match. At his elbow stood a table, and on the table a candle and a gilded candlestick. This he lighted, then looked around. The chamber was vast, the hangings heavy with embroidery. Over the fireplace towered a carved mantel, gray with the ash of dead fires. In a recess by the deep-set window stood a bed, from which the bedclothes, soft and fine as lace, trailed to the polished floor. He lifted the candle above his head. A handkerchief lay at his feet. It was faintly perfumed. He turned towards the window. In front of them was a canapé, and over it were flung pell-mell a gown of silk, a heap of lace-like garments, white and delicate as spider's meshes, long, crumpled gloves, and on the floor beneath, the stockings, the little pointed shoes, and one garter of rosy silk, quaintly flowered and fitted with a silver clasp. Wondering, he stepped forward and drew the heavy curtain from the bed. For a moment, the candle flared in his hand, then his eyes met two others' eyes, wide open, smiling, and the candle flame flashed over hair heavy as gold. She was pale, but not as white as he. Her eyes were untroubled as a child's, but he stared, trembling from head to foot, while the candle flickered in his hand. At last he whispered,
Sylvia, it is I.
Again he said,
It is I.
Then, knowing that she was dead, he kissed her on the mouth. Why? Why? And through the long watches of the night, the cat purred on his knee, tightening and relaxing her padded claws until the skies paled above the street of the four winds. Why? I knew he was an incel. I didn't think he was that much of an incel. We're talking geographical Brittany, right? Oh my gosh. Chamber seems to have a thing for Brittany. It comes up a lot. Is that a mildew? Okay, so Rory, what you have to do is that you have to pin someone, and then you have to like take a deep whiff of their hair and be like, is that mildew, my love? Honestly, I kind of liked this one. Not gonna lie. I think that... So Mask is my favorite. And Yellow Sign is up there. I'd say this one was on par with Repairer of Reputations. I would say Reputations is probably my third favorite, but I'd say Street of the Four Winds, I actually kind of liked it. I liked that it was just a dude talking to a cat. And then... I don't know, the fact that he just kisses her on the mouth is kind of... Like, this isn't even horror. This is literally just a dude finds a stray cat, goes to find who the cat's owner is, and then the cat's owner was dead the whole time. Gotta kiss the corpse, it's tradition. Eclipse, what tradition? Who are you? It's canon, I only eat rocks, exactly. I think that would make someone think they were about to have their liver ate. I mean, I guess he's got to try it and see how it goes. Okay, those collectively took me like half an hour. This should take me like an hour and a half, so I can do the third one. I could do Street of First Shell, and then I would only have Street of Our Lady of the Fields and Rue Buddy, which both are long, but I could wrap this up next week. You don't give your corpses a little smooch now and then? No, they have bullet holes. You think I want to contaminate the evidence and leave either my DNA or my fingerprints present? No. I take them out from a distance and then I leave. No blood splatter here. No swapping saliva here. No fingerprints or other incriminating evidence. Keep it at a distance. Remove the gun from the scene. Do not stash it at the scene. That is a terrible decision. They will find it out with the serial number off or on. And then you just continue on with your day like nothing happened. Arrow talks to her cat boy like a Valorant e-boy. I did just hit him up with some memes earlier. Let me show you. Rory, I'm going to send you the memes that I sent Neko earlier, and I just said, "Is this you?" I sent him these because I feel like this is him. You let me know if this is true or not. Oh, speaking of, he just responded. Bruh, he says. His only response is bruh. Yeah, that's definitely him. Thank you, thank you. I'm just gonna stare at Arrow like Dokes at Desker. If you want, you can hop on stream and you can have a live commentary reaction. This is already a sketch. I tried making this members only, and the stream did not want to be members only. So I might as well have a non-member in call with me. The Arrow soda comes in lead flavor. Exactly. Little kiss and a head pat, then off to the worms. Okay, so we're gonna go Street the first shell. You're busy today. That's fair. This is a public stream. Initially, this was going to be a member stream. Yeah, your private account. Oh my gosh. Is that where you're my top donator too? Be of good cheer. The sullen month will die, and a young moon requite us by and by. Look how the old one, meager, bent and wan, with age and fast, is fainting from the sky. Finger snaps. Street of the first shell. No, I'm your top donator because I carry in rivals. Really? Which one of us gets MVP more often? Which one of us gets more KD more often? Which one of us contributes to the team more often? Which one of us plays the point? Which one of us is actually present on the point when we play Marvel Rivals, independent of role? It doesn't matter if I'm support or I'm tank or I'm DPS. Anytime you play that game, you're so focused on glory chasing and trying to get the KD up that you just completely ignore the objective and don't actually contribute effectively. Which one of us heals the tank? We both heal the tank depending on what role we're playing, you absolute jerk. Venom, listen, I can't help how caked up I am. Makes me think of a shiv that Rory Gorgon uses to shave rocks. Arrow rant. Okay, this is not my worst Arrow rant. If you want an Arrow rant, check out last week's stream where when reading the Desmoiselle D, I fully ranted for like 20 minutes about how you need to have self-respect, about how you can't be a simp, about how if you want someone to like you, you have to be interesting. You have to present it in an interesting way. I went on like a 20-minute rant last week, which is now public because I make these streams public afterwards. But if you want Arrow rants, that is where you look for Arrow rants. Right here, right now, I am only speaking the truth. If anything, I am proselytizing. I'm spreading the good word. And that is not a rant. That is not itinerant. That is simply the truth, plain and simple. Delivered right into your ear hole. True, chat, if you want Arrow's affection, you really should be more interested. So many times people be like, would you love me if I'm a worm? And then I say, no, I don't love you now. And people always are like, oh, Arrow, you don't mean that. And I'm like, did I stutter? Did I come off inauthentically? Because I didn't intend to. If you want me to clarify, I'm more than happy to. I don't care for you. I don't love you. And I don't think I ever will. And then they just like have their heart broken, right? Preach it. But if we were interested, we wouldn't be in chat. Oh my gosh. Yes, the Prophet's Paradise. Ugh, the Prophet's Paradise. Don't ask us if you came or not. No! Bad. Blah. I'm gonna read the book. Arrow's yet to say this to me, chat. I still got a chance. I don't know, you sound like a tsundere. I'm no such thing. If I was a tsundere, I would say other things. There's nothing... It's not like I appreciate you. Okay, don't get the wrong idea. The room was already dark. The high roofs opposite cut off what little remained of the December daylight. The girl drew her chair near the window and, choosing a large needle, threaded it, knotting the thread over her fingers. Then she smoothed the baby garment across her knees and, bending, bit off the thread and drew the smaller needle from where it rested in the hem. When she had brushed away the stray threads and bits of lace, she laid it again over her knees caressingly. Then she slipped the threaded needle from her corsage and passed it through a button. But As the button spun down the thread, her hand faltered, the thread snapped, and the button rolled across the floor. She raised her head. Her eyes were fixed on a strip of waning light above the chimneys. From somewhere in the city came sounds like a distant beating of drums, and far beyond, a vague muttering, now growing, swelling, rumbling in the distance, like the pounding of surf upon the rocks. Now, like the surf again, receding, growling, menacing. The cold had become intense, a bitter, piercing cold, which strained and snapped at joists and beams and turned the slush of yesterday to flint. From the street below, every sound broke sharp and metallic. The clatter of sabots, the rattle of shutters or the rare sound of a human voice. The air was heavy, weighted with the black cold as with a pall. To breathe was painful, to move an effort. Like, again, Chambers is a good writer. To breathe was painful, to move an effort. Perfect descriptor of what it feels like to be in a cold December day. Hey, Doomington. Also, hey, Keeler. Eros all soon no dere. Eros a kudere. See, that's the thing. I could rock that. Although, I saw a meme recently where it's just like, they don't call you tsundere anymore. They just say you have BPD. And then another one was, they don't call you a kudere anymore. They just say you have autism. And then, what was the yandere? There was another one for yandere, but it was just like going through all the dere archetypes. Which is like, they don't call you dere anymore. They just call you manic depressive. It's so funny. In the desolate sky, there was that wearied... In the desolate sky, there was something that wearied. In the brooding clouds, something that saddened. It penetrated the freezing city, cut by the freezing river. The splendid city with its towers and domes, its quays and bridges, and its 1,000 spires. It entered the squares. It seized the avenues and the palaces, stole across bridges, and crept among the narrow streets of the Latin Quarter. Gray under the gray of the December sky. Sadness. Utter sadness. A fine, icy sleet was falling, powdering the pavement with tiny, crystalline dust. It sifted against the window panes and drifted in heaps along the sill. The light at the window had nearly failed, and the girl bent low over her work. Presently, she raised her head, brushing the curls from her eyes. Jack? Dearest? Don't forget to clean your palette. Another artist! Oh my gosh, like, write about something else. Seriously. Chambers, write about something other than, like, rich, young artists that are Americans living in Paris. I understand, write what you know, but learn to write something else. Know something more than the one trick you have repeated over and over and over again. It was fun the first couple times. I enjoyed the polycule and the mask. I enjoyed the yellow sign and the really cute romance that I had going on. But this is like story 7 of 10, and we are 7 of 10 of artists. Or maybe 6 of 10 of artists because one was unclear. But like 7 of 10 Americans in France. Bro, please. Give me something. Give me something different. God forbid a few Americans move to Paris. Let's talk about French immigration, shall we? Let's talk about French foreign policy. Chambers seems to have taken write what you know very seriously. Exactly. Yandere is I think it was bipolar. I think the yandere was, they don't call you a yandere anymore. They just call you bipolar. He said, all right. Picking up his palette, sat down on the floor in front of the stove. His head and shoulders were in the shadow, but the firelight fell across his knees and glimmered red on the blade of the palette knife. Full in the firelight beside him stood a color box. On the lid was carved, J. Trent, École de Beaux-Arts. École de Beaux-Arts. I'm gonna be judged, and I'm not gonna read chat because I know French-speaking people are in chat, Rorston. Patty the platypus. Perry the French platypus. I think he's just saying something about what happens to Americans that spend too long in France. Castaigne, thank you. Probably doesn't count, and I don't think France was involved there. The yellow mask... the yellow sign? The yellow sign or the mask? Which one? Was also set in the US, but Mr. Scott did have experience living in France and was an artist. I don't think Trent is a name I recognize. The inscription was ornamented with an American and a French flag. The sleet blew against the window panes, covering them with stars and diamonds, then, melting from the warmer air within, ran down and froze again in fern-like traceries. It's such a good description. What the heck? The sleet blew against the window panes, covering them with stars and diamonds. The actual sleet, the snow, the ice crystals hitting the window is stars and diamonds. Beautiful, transcendent, resplendent, amazing. But then they melt because the warmer air within ran down and froze again like fern-like traceries. That's like 3 descriptions in one. And it feels so real because I'm sure you've seen that. If you come from a place with snow where it's snowing outside, but it's warm inside. So it hits the window, it freezes in place, and then it melts, and then it freezes after melting. That's the sort of little texture that will take your writing from empty headroom to you have a setting to you have a setting that has character. You have a description that has character. Because if you just stopped where the inscription was ornamented with an American and French flag, the sleet blew against the window panes, covering them with stars and diamonds, a dog whined. Like, if you just moved on from that, that would be nice. That would turn it from just nothing is happening to something is happening. And it's a nice description. The sleet blew against the window panes, covering them with stars and diamonds. That is figurative language by itself. But then adding that extra step of the realistic reaction of the heat from the inside melting them, and then having a completely different description. They froze again like fern-like traceries. That's just like an extra level. That's legitimately quite good writing. And I keep saying this. I keep being surprised that a classic piece of literature has good pieces of writing in it. But when I think about like 19th century literature, something different, heterosexual fictional relationships. Oh my gosh. Not heterosexual. What? Now I'm thinking about what I just read. Hi, Wampus. Hi, Cantus. Arrow, why don't you write like this? I do not. That's a lie. I do not write this well. Rory, have you ever read anything I've written? Like outside of my scripts, which I specifically write my scripts to be conversational. I don't write my scripts like prose. I write my scripts to be conversational so that I suppose they're somewhat informational, but I basically script in the way that I would talk off the dome. When I write a script in the sense that I write stream of consciousness, what I think about, what I would say, what I'm riffing, and then I refine it. And then I add to it. And then usually I'll cut a section and then I'll add a new section. But it's all fundamentally just me off the dome and making it faster, making it tighter, making that illusion that I had to the Minotaur in Greece. I changed that to an illusion referencing the horse herds of Mongolia because later I end up making a joke about Genghis Khan. So instead of having 2 separate references, the Minotaur and Genghis Khan, I end up making that Minotaur reference into a reference that will then build into the Genghis Khan reference, which that is something that is like just good writing. But fundamentally, that's still pretty conversational. If you're good enough at improv, you can just do that naturally. I sometimes do that. I struggle to do that. I try my best. So I don't think I've actually shared much of my actual prose with the community. Yes, this is a live stream where it was supposed to be members only, but then I accidentally made it public. And then instead of kicking people out once they showed up, I was like, I'll just keep it live because why not? So the sleet blew against the window panes, covering them with stars and diamonds. Then, melting from the warmer air within, ran down and froze again in fern-like traceries. A dog whined, and the patter of small paws sounded on the zinc below the stove. Jack, dear, do you think Hercules is hungry? The patter of paws was redoubled behind the stove. He's whining, she continued nervously. And if it isn't because he's hungry, it's because... Her voice faltered. A loud humming filled the air. The windows vibrated. Oh, Jack, she cried. Another! But her voice was drowned in the scream of a shell tearing through the clouds overhead. Oh. They're like actively being shelled. They're just understood. Warzone. Did not pick up on that. That is the nearest yet, she murmured. Oh no, he answered cheerfully. It probably fell out of the way over Montmartre. And she did not answer. He said again with an exaggerated unconcern. They wouldn't take the trouble to fire at the Latin Quarter. Anyway, they haven't had a battery that can hurt it. After a while, she spoke up brightly. Jack, dear, when are you going to take me to see Monsieur West's statues? I will bet. I will bet. I will bet. That's how I'm reading that. I'm imagining he's speaking like a 2010s, like Gen Z, like, I will bet, he said, throwing down his palette and walking over to the window beside her. That Colette has been here to... Is Colette from A Repair of Reputations? The year is 1870, Franco-Prussian War, Paris came under German guns, and more interesting, it is the time of the Paris Commune, long live the revolution. The King in Yellow, War of Mine. Okay, fun fact, I have this War of Mine, the game that Frostpunk devs made before making Frostpunk, and I played it for like an hour, and I enjoyed it, but then because of pathing, one of my dudes died, and I got frustrated and I put it down and then I didn't pick it back up again. I could play this War of Mine on stream, right? If folks are interested in that. I currently, like, I'm not gonna lie, my next like month, probably for the rest of the year, my streams are scheduled. I don't have much flexibility for like gaming streams for the rest of the year. Because this Saturday, my goal is to finish Hollow Knight. I'm gonna grind Hollow Knight. The week after, on next Saturday, I have a virtual conference that I'm going to be participating in where I will share more details and you can join me. It is going to be a digital gaming conference that I don't even know what I'm going to be doing there, but like I signed up as a creator and they accepted me. So now we get early access on the 28th. So I'll share more information about that. You'll have to like download a launcher, but aside from that, it'll be a time to hop on and hopefully see the community. And then after that point, I'm either going to finish Hollow Knight because I didn't, or I'm going to move into Dispatch because I want to play Dispatch, right? And also, this Saturday is Hollow Knight. Next Saturday is the event. The Saturday after, I'm going to be off because I'm meeting up with some extended family. They'll probably stream Sunday. And then the 13th and the 20th, I will stream. Now, this is news, but given the prevalence of yellow fever, the original readers of the story would have automatically assumed the King in Yellow with disease. Okay. Question. Was there a disease called yellow fever? I had a conversation with Rorston about this. I was talking with Rory about this, and I commented about the disease yellow fever. And he told me that's not an actual disease. That is just the weirdo thing. Right? Because like in modern times, if you talk about yellow fever, that is like a pejorative term generally for a white man who is primarily interested in Asian women. Right? Like it's meant to be dismissive. But I thought that yellow fever was an actual real disease that did exist. And then he was teasing me because I got that wrong. And I think that he was trying to gaslight me. Yellow fever is real. It's also, yeah, so that's the thing. In modern times, the latter term of what Quoid said is what it's mostly referred to as. But it used to actually be a real thing. Vivi the Revolution is a hybrid of Final Fantasy IX and French Revolution gag character I've been keeping under my hat. Oh my gosh. Can you not? Car? Thank you. I appreciate you for listening to me. All right, we're being shelled because it's the Franco-Prussian War. Why? She asked, opening her eyes very wide. Then, oh, it's too bad. Really, men are tiresome when they think they know everything. And I warn you that if Monsieur West is vain enough to imagine that Colette, from the north, another shell came whistling and quavering throughout the sky, passing above them with a long-drawn screech which left the window singing. That, he blurted out, was too close for comfort. They were silent for a while, then he spoke again gaily. Go on, Sylvia, and whither, poor West. But she only sighed. Oh dear, I can never seem to get used to the shells. He sat down on the arm of the chair beside her. Her scissors fell jingling to the floor. She tossed the unfinished frock after them, and putting both arms round his neck, drew him down into her lap. Don't go out tonight, Jack. He kissed her uplifted face. You know I must, but don't make it hard for me.
But when I hear the shells, and I know you're out in the city, but they all fall in Montmartre, but they all fall in the Beaux Arts, and you said yourself too struck in the Quai d'Orsay. Mere accident. Jack, have pity on me. Take me with you. And who will there be to get dinner? She rose and flung herself on the bed. Oh, I can't get used to it, and I know you must go, but I beg you not to be late to dinner. If you knew what I had to suffer, I cannot help it, and you must be patient with me, dear. He said, it is as safe there as it is in our own house. That's called foreshadowing. That means both is blowing up. Or just the house is blowing up. She watched him fill for her the alcohol lamp, and when he had lighted it and had taken his hat to go, she jumped up and clung to him in silence. After a moment, he said, now, Sylvia, remember my courage is sustained by yours. Come, I must go. She did not move, and he repeated, I must go. Then she stepped back, and he thought she was going to speak and waited, but she only looked at him, and, a little impatiently, he kissed her again, saying, don't worry, dearest. When he had reached the last flight of stairs on his way to the street, a woman hobbled out of the housekeeper's lodge, waving a letter and calling, Monsieur Jack! Monsieur Jack! This was left by Monsieur Fallobe! He took the letter and, leaning on the threshold of the lodge, read it. Dear Jack, I believe Braith is dead broke, and I'm sure Fallobe is. Braith swears he isn't, and Fallobe swears he is, so you can draw your own conclusions. I've got a scheme for dinner. If it works, I will let your fellows in. Yours faithfully, West. P.S. Fallobe has shaken Hartman and his gang, thank the Lord. There's something rotten there. Or it may be he's only a miser. P.P.S. I'm more desperately in love than ever, but I'm sure she does not care a straw for me. Yeah, ain't that the truth? Ain't that how it goes? Wait, Trent? Who's Trent? Oh, Jack Trent. Got it. Understood. All right, said Trent with a smile to the concierge. But tell me, how's Papa Cottard? The old woman shook her head and pointed to the curtained bed in the lodge. Peter Cottard, he cried cheerily. How goes the wound today? He walked over to the bed and drew the curtains. An old man was lying among the tumbled sheets. Better, replied the man wearily, and after a pause. Have you heard any news, Monsieur Jack? I haven't been out today. I will bring you any rumor I may hear, though goodness knows I've got enough rumors, he muttered to himself. Then aloud, cheer up, you're looking better. And the sortie. Oh, the sortie. That's for this week. General Schrosch sent orders last night. It will be terrible. It will be sickening, thought Trent, as he walked out into the street and turned the corner to the Rue de Sens. Slaughter, pew. Slaughter, pew. I'm glad I'm not going. Where is this coming from? Over the top, lads. Exactly. It will be sickening, thought Trent as he went out into the street and turned the corner towards the Rue de Sens. Slaughter, phew. Glad I'm not going. That's such like a diva line. I don't know why. I find that so funny. The street was almost deserted. A few women muffled in tattered military capes crept along the frozen pavement, and a wretchedly clad gayman covered over the sewer hole on the corner of the boulevard. A rope around his waist held his rags together. From the rope hung a rat, still warm and bleeding? What the heck? There's another in there, he yelled at Trent. I hit him, but he got away. Oh, he's like a rat catcher. Got it. Trent crossed the street and asked, how much? 2 francs for a quarter of a fat one. That's what they give at the Saint Germain market. A violent fit of coughing interrupted him, but he wiped his face with the palm of his hand and looked cunningly at Trent. Last week you could buy a rat for 6 francs, but... And he swore violently. The rats have quit the Rue de Sens, and now they kill them over at the hospital. I'll let you have this for 7 francs. I can sell for 10 at the Isle of St. Louis. You lie, said Trent. And let me tell you that if you try to swindle anybody in this quarter, the people will make short work of you and your rats. Oh, so he's selling rats as like dinner rations. Understood. He stood a moment eyeing the gayman, who pretended to snivel. Then he tossed him a franc, laughing. The child caught it, and thrusting it into his mouth, wheeled about to the sewer hole. For a second he crouched, motionless, alert, his eyes on the bars of the drain. Then leaping forward, he hurled a stone into the gutter, and Trent left him to finish a fierce grey rat that writhed squealing at the mouth of the sewer. Suppose Braith should come to that, he thought. Poor little chap. And hurrying, he turned into the dirty passage de Beaux Arts and entered the third house to the left. Monsieur is at home, quavered the old concierge.
Home. A garret absolutely bare, save for the iron bedstead in the corner and the iron basin and pitcher on the floor. West appeared at the door, winking with much mystery and motioned Trent to enter. Braith, who was painting in bed to keep warm, looked up, laughed, and shook hands. Any news? The perfunctory question was answered as usual by, nothing but cannon. Trent sat down on the bed. Where on earth did you get that? He demanded, pointing to the half-finished chicken nestled in a wash bin. West grinned. Are you millionaires, you two? Out with it. Braith looked a little ashamed, began. Oh, it's one of West's exploits, but it was cut short by West, who said he would tell the story himself. You see, before the siege, I had a letter of introduction to a type here, a fat banker, German-American variety. You know the species, I see. Well, of course, I forgot to present the letter, but this morning, judging it to be a favorable opportunity, I called on him. The villain lives in comfort. Fires, my boy, fires in the anterooms. The buttons finally condescends to carry my letter and card up, leaving me standing in the hallway, which I did not like, so I entered the first room I saw and nearly fainted at the sight of the banquet on a table by the fire. Down comes Buttons, very insolent. No, oh no, his master's not at home, and in fact too busy to receive letters of introduction just now. The siege and many business difficulties. I deliver a kick to Buttons, pick up this chicken from the table, toss my card on the empty plate, and addressing Buttons as a species of Prussian pig, march out with the honors of war. Sorry, I'm like squeak laughing because hey, I got this note that I could go to this rich dude's house, and I show up, his servant tries to kick me out, so I kick his servant, take his chicken, toss my card on the plate, and leave after calling the servant a pig. Not even just a pig, they're currently at war with the Prussians, so just like, you German pig. I like West. West is a Chad. Arrow Squeaks is at risk of French street urchins trying to serve me up for dinner. No! By the way, a lot of the characters in the last 3 stories are characters that appear in his first book. Ooh, nice. Incredibly base behavior. Exactly, Safety. Trent shook his head. I forgot to say that Hartman often dines there, and I draw my own conclusions. Continued West. Now about this chicken, half of it is for Braith and myself, and half for Colette. But of course, you will help me eat my part because I'm not hungry. Neither am I, began Braith, but Trent, with a smile at the pinched face before him, shook his head saying, what nonsense? You know I'm never hungry. What nonsense? You know I'm never hungry. West hesitated, reddened, and then slicing off Braith's portion, but not eating any himself, said goodnight and hurried away to number 470 Rue Serpent? Serpent? To number 470 Rue Serpent, where lived a pretty girl named Colette, orphaned after Sedan, orphaned after Sedan, and heaven alone knows where she got the roses in her cheeks, for the siege came hard on the poor. That chicken will delight her, but I really believe she's in love with West, said Trent. Then walking over to the bed, see here, old man, no dodging, you know, how much you have left? The other hesitated and flushed. Come, old chap, insisted Trent. Braith drew a purse from beneath his bolster and handed it to his friend with a simplicity that touched him. 7 sous, he counted. You make me tired. Why on earth don't you come to me? I take it... Is this censored? I take it... Did? I take it... Did? I take it did ill, Braith. How many times must I go over the same thing and explain to you that because I have money, it is my duty to share it, and your duty and the duty of every American is to share with me. You can't get a cent. The city's blockaded, and the American minister has his hands full with all the German riffraff and deuce knows about what. Why don't you act sensibly? Damned. Oh. Okay, Arrow, we have a slight issue. What is the slight issue? Oh no. I will, Trent, but it's an obligation that perhaps I can never repay in part. I'm poor, and of course you'll pay me. If I were a usurer, I would take your talent for security. When you are rich and famous, don't, Trent. All right, only no more monkey business. He slipped a dozen gold pieces into the purse, and tucking it again under the mattress, smiled at Braith. How old are you? He demanded. 16? Trent laid his hands on his friend's shoulder. I'm 22, and I have the rights of a grandfather as far as you're concerned. You'll do as I say until you're 21. The siege will be over. The siege will be over then, I hope, said Braith, trying to laugh, but the prayer in their hearts. Oh, freaking heck. The siege will be over then, I hope, said Braith, trying to laugh, but the prayer in their hearts, "Oh long, oh Lord, how long," was answered by the swift scream of a shell soaring among the storm clouds of that December night. Okay, so I thought Braith was young, and then I thought Braith was old, and then I thought Braith was young, and now I'm just like, hello, 16-year-old, I am a 22-year-old, I am your grandfather. I might have or might not have continued the Yemen game, and I might or might not have turned a certain pop into soldiers, and now they're rebelling. Rory, don't you know that if you want to take after the Romans, or you want to take after the Spartans, or you want to take after the many different historical precedents for what empire you are starting, you can't give the working class any ability to control the military? I know they cost less maintenance. Yes, they cost less maintenance. However, how can you keep them oppressed if you give them weapons? That is my question for you. Me, your grandfather, apparently this phrase is used pretty often in Chinese wuxia. Oh. Interesting. Oh yeah, I mean, I know it was being blanked out, but the battle... Wait, sorry, the Battle of Sedan is where Napoleon III was captured by the Germans. West, standing in the doorway of a house in the Rue Serpent, was speaking angrily. He said he didn't care whether Hartman liked it or not. He was telling him, not arguing with him. You call yourself an American. Berlin and hell are full of that kind of American. You come loafing about Colette with your pockets stuffed with white bread and beef and a bottle of wine at 30 francs, and you really can't afford to give $1 to the American ambulance and public assistance, which Braith does when he's half starved. Hartman retreated to the curbstone, but West followed him, his face like a thundercloud. Don't you dare call yourself a countryman of mine, he growled. No, nor an artist either. Artists don't worm themselves into the service of the public defense, where they do nothing but feed like rats on the people's food. And I'll tell you now, he continued, dropping his voice, for Hartman had started as though stung. You might better keep away from that Elastian brazery and that smug-faced thief who haunt it. You know what they do with suspects. You lie, you hound, screamed Hartman, and flung the bottle in his hand straight at West's face. West had him by the throat in a second, forcing him against the dead wall, shook him wickedly. Now you listen to me, he muttered through his clenched teeth. You and I are already a suspect, and I swear, I believe you are a paid spy. It isn't my business to detect such vermin, and I don't intend to denounce you, but understand this. Colette don't like you, and I can't stand you, and if I catch you in the street again, I'll make it somewhat unpleasant. Get out, you sleek Prussian. Okay, wartime insults go so hard. Alsatian is in Alsace-Lorraine, also where the dog breed is named. Oh! Nice. Man's really said, like, yo, stay away from this girl, or else I'm gonna McCarthyism you. I'm gonna start calling people sleep Prussians when I want to insult them. Hartman had managed to drag a knife from his pocket, but West tore it from him and hurled him into... West is so cool. I'm loving West. Hartman had managed to drag a knife from his pocket, but West tore it from him and hurled him into the gutter. A gayman who had seen this burst into a peal of laughter, which rattled harshly in the silent street. Then everywhere, windows were raised and rows of haggard faces appeared, demanding to know why people should laugh in the starving city. Is it a victory? Murmured one. Look at that, cried West, as Hartman picked himself up the pavement. Look, you miser, look at those faces. But Hartman gave him a look, which he could never forget, and walked away without a word. Trent, who suddenly appeared around the corner, glanced curiously at West, who merely nodded towards his door, saying, Come in, Fallowby's upstairs. What are you doing with that knife? Demanded Fallowby, as he and Trent entered the studio. West looked at his wounded hand, which still clutched the knife, but sang, Cut myself by accident. Tossed it into a corner and washed the blood from his fingers. Chad response. Like, West might be the biggest Chad out of all of these MCs. And West isn't even the main character. I think Trent is the main character, but like, West is one of the biggest Chads here. Fallowby, fat and lazy, watched him without comment, but Trent, half divining how things had turned, walked over to Fallowby smiling. I have a bone to pick with you, he said. Where is it? I'm hungry, replied Fallowby with affected eagerness, but Trent, frowning, told him to listen. How much did I advance you a week ago? 380 francs, replied the other with a squirm of contrition. Where is it? Fallowby began a series of intricate explanations, which were soon cut short by Trent. I know you. You blew it in. You always blow it in. I don't care a rap.
what you did before the siege. I know you're rich and have a right to dispose of your money as you wish to, and I also know that, generally speaking, it's none of my business. But now it is my business, and I have to supply the funds until you get me some more, which you won't until the siege is ended one way or another. I wish to share what I have, but I won't see it thrown out a window. Oh yes. Of course I know you will reimburse me, but that isn't the question. And anyways, it's the opinion of your friends, old man, that you will not be worse off for a little abstinence from worldly pleasures. You're positively a freak in this famine-cursed city of skeletons. Oh! Oh! You are positively a freak in this famine-cursed city of skeletons. Abstain from fleshly pleasures. 1890s literature kind of goes hard. I am rather stout, he admitted. Is it true you're out of money? Demanded Trout. Yes, I am, said the other. That roast sucking pig on the Rue Saint-Honore. Is it there yet? Continued Trent. What? Stammered the feeble one. Ah, I thought so. I caught you in ecstasy before that sucking pig at least a dozen times. Then, laughing, he presented Farabee with a roll of 20-franc pieces, saying, If these go for luxuries, you must live on your own flesh, and went over to aid West, who sat beside the wash basin, binding up his hand. West suffered him to tie the knot, and then said, You remember yesterday, when I left you and Braith to take the chicken to Colette? Chicken? Good heavens, moaned Fallabee. Chicken, repeated West, enjoying Fallabee's grief. I must explain that things are changed. Colette and I are to be married. What about the chicken? Groaned Fallabee. Shut up! Laughed Trent, and slipping his arm through West's, walked to the stairway. The poor little thing, said West. Just think, not a splinter of firewood for a week and wouldn't tell me because she thought I needed it for my clay figure. Whew. When I heard it, I smashed that smirking clay nymph to pieces, and the rest can freeze and be hanged. After a moment, he added timidly, Won't you call on your way down and say bonsoir? It's number 17. Yes, said Trent, and he went out softly, closing the door behind him. He stopped on the third landing, lighted a match, scanned the numbers over the row of dingy doors, and knocked at number 17. C'est toi, George? The door opened. Oh, pardon, Monsieur Jack. I thought it was Monsieur West. Then, blushing furiously, Oh, I see you have heard. Oh, thank you so much for... Wait, I? Oh, pardon, Monsieur Jack. Oh, it was... That quote should be there. Oh, pardon, Monsieur Jack. I thought it was Monsieur West. Then, blushing furiously, Oh, I've seen you have heard. Thank you so much for your wishes. I'm sure we love each other very much. And I'm dying to see Sylvia and tell her and what? Laughed Trent. And I'm very happy, she sighed. That's another Sylvia mention. Sylvia name drop. I know another West, Colonel West, real nice chap from this other book series. Oh no. You sleek Prussian goes kind of hard as a rap name. I don't know. I feel like if I go around calling someone a sleek Prussian, they're not going to know what I mean, but I'll know it's an insult. He's pure gold, returned Trent, and then, gaily, I want you and George to come and dine with us tonight. The polycules write themselves. When Trent is very happy about his friend's engagement, he's extremely supportive of West getting married to Colette, and then he says gaily that he wants them to come over to his place. I'm not the only one here, right? I want you to come and dine with us tonight. It's a little treat. You see, tomorrow is Sylvia's fête. She will be 19. I have written to Thorne, and the Guernalecs will come with their cousin Odile. Fallabee is engaged not to bring anyone but himself. The girl accepted shyly, charging him with loads of loving messages to Sylvia, and he said goodnight. He started up the street, walking swiftly for his bitter cold, and cutting across the Rue de la Lune, he entered the Rue de Seine. The early winter night had fallen, almost without warning, but the sky was clear and myriads of stars glittered in the heavens. The bombardment had become furious, a steady rolling thunder from the Prussian cannon, punctuated by the heavy shocks from Mont Valérien. The shells streamed across the sky, leaving trails like shooting stars, and now, as he turned to look back, rockets blue and red flared above the horizons from the fort of Issy, and the fortress of the north flamed like a bonfire. Good news! A man shouted over the boulevard Saint-Germain. As if by magic, the street were filled with people, shivering, chattering people with sunken eyes. Jacques! Cried one. The army of the Loire! Mon vieux, it has come then at last. I told thee, tomorrow, tonight, who knows? Is it true? Is it a sortie? Someone said, oh God, a sortie, and my son! Another cried, to the Seine? They said one can see the signals of the army of the Lord from the Pont Neuf. There's a child standing near Trent who kept repeating, Mama, Mama, then tomorrow we may eat the white bread? And beside him an old man swaying, stumbling, his shriveled hands crushed to his breast, muttering as if insane. Could it be true? Who has heard the news? The shoemaker on the Rue de Buchy had heard from a mobile who had heard from a Frank... The shoemaker on Rue de Buchy had heard it from a mobile who had heard a Frank Thurier repeat it to a captain of the National Guard. Quite the substantiated rumor. Really. I'd trust that logic. Trent followed the throng surging through the Rue de Seine to the river. Rocket after rocket clove the sky, and now, from Montmartre, the cannons clanged, and the batteries on Montparnasse joined in with a crash. The bridge was packed with people. Trent asked, who has seen the signals of the army of the Loire? We're waiting, was the reply. He looked towards the north. Suddenly, the huge silhouette of the Arc de Triomphe sprang into black relief against the flash of a cannon. The boom of the gun rolled along the quay, and the old bridge vibrated. Again, over by the Point de Joux, a flash and heavy explosion shook the bridge. Then the whole eastern bastion of the fortress blazed and crackled, sending a red flame into the sky. Has anyone seen the signals yet? He asked again. We're waiting, was the reply. Yes, waiting, murmured a man behind him. Waiting, sick, starved, freezing, but waiting. Is it a sortie? They go gladly. Is it to starve? They starve. They've no time to think of surrender. Are they heroes, these Parisians? Answer me, Trent. The American ambulance surgeon turned about and scanned the parapets of the bridge. Any news, doctor? Asked Trent mechanically. News, said the doctor. I don't know any. I haven't had time to know any. What are these people after? They say that the army of the Loire has signaled Mount Verlian. Poor devils. The doctor glanced about him for an instant and then, I'm so harried and worried that I don't know what to do. After the last sortie, we had the work of 50 ambulances on our poor little corps. Tomorrow, there's another sortie, and I wish you fellows could come over to the headquarters. We may need volunteers. How's Madame? He added abruptly. Well, replied Trent, but she seems to grow more nervous every day. I ought to be with her now. Take care of her, said the doctor. Then, with a sharp look at the people, I can't stop now. Good night. And he hurried away muttering, poor devils. Trent leaned over the parapet and blinked at the black river surging through the arches. Dark objects, carried swiftly on the breast of the current, struck with a grinding tearing noise against the stone piers, spun around for an instant, and hurried away into the darkness. The ice from the Marne. As he stood staring into the water, a hand was laid on his shoulder. Hello, Southwark, he cried, turning round. This is a queer place for you. Trent, I have to tell you something. Don't stay here. Don't believe in the army of the Loire. And the attaché of the American legation slipped his arm through... And the attaché of the American legation slipped his arm through Trent's and drew him towards the Louvre. Then it's another lie, said Trent bitterly. Worse. We know at the legation. I can't speak of it. But that's not what I have to say. Something happened this afternoon. The Alsatian brazier was visited, and an American named Hartman has been arrested. Do you know him? I know a German who calls himself an American. His name is Hartman. Well, he was arrested about 2 hours ago. They mean to shoot him. What? Of course, we at the legation can't allow them to shoot him offhand, but the evidence seems conclusive. Is he a spy? Well, the papers seized in his room are pretty damning proof. Besides, he was caught, they say, swindling the Public Food Committee. He drew rations for 50. How? I don't know. He claims to be an American artist here, and we have been obliged to take notice of it at the legation. It's a nasty affair. To cheat the people at such a time is worse than robbing the poor box, cried Trent angrily. Let them shoot him. He's an American citizen. Yes, oh yes, said the other with bitterness. American citizenship is a precious privilege which every Google-eyed German... His anger choked him. Southwark shook hands with him warmly. It can't be helped. We must own the carrion. I am afraid you may be called upon to identify him as an American artist, he said with the ghost of a smile on his deep lined face, and walked through the Cour la Reine. Why am I invested in this? Unironically, this is definitely top 3. I'm much more invested in this one than most of the other stories. Up there with the mask and the yellow sign. Trent swore silently for a moment, then drew out his watch. 7 o'clock. Sylvia will be anxious, he thought, and hurried back to the river. The crowd still huddled, shivering on the bridge, a somber, pitiful congregation, peering out into the night for the signal of the army of the Loire.
and their hearts beat time to the pounding of the guns, their eyes lighted with each flash of the bastion, and hope rose from the drifting rockets. A black cloud hung over the fortifications. From horizon to horizon, the cannon smoke stretched in wavering bands, now capping the spires and domed with cloud, now blowing in streamers and shreds along the streets, now descending from the housetops, enveloping quays, bridges, and rivers in sulphurous mist. And through the smoke pall, the lighting of the cannon played while from time to time a rift above showed a fathomless black vault set with stars. He turned again in the Rue de Seine, that sad abandoned street with its rows of closed shutters and desolate ranks of unlighted lamps. He was a little nervous and wished once or twice for a revolver, but the slinking forms which passed him in the darkness were too weak with hunger to be dangerous, he thought, and he passed on unmolested to his doorway. But there, somebody sprang at his throat. Over and over the icy pavement, he rolled with his assailant, tearing at the noose around his neck. Then, with a wrench, sprang to his feet. "Get up!" he cried to the other. Slowly, and with great deliberation, a small gamin picked himself out of the cover and surveyed Trent with disgust. "That was a clean trick," said Trent. "Oh, whelp of your age, you finished against a dead wall. Give me that cord." The urchin handed him the noose without a word. Trent struck a match and looked at his assailant. It was the rat killer of the day before. "I thought so," he muttered. "Tiens, c'est toi?" said the gamin tranquilly. The impudence, the overpowering audacity of the ragamuffin took Trent's breath away. That's me daily. I need to start saying, the impudence, the overpowering audacity of this ragamuffin. "Do you know, you young strangler," he gasped, "that they shoot thieves of your age?" The child turned a passionless face to Trent. "Shoot, then." Oh, snap! West is not the biggest Chad in this story. It is this child gamin who is grabbing rats and trying to peddle them at twice the price that they're owed. Shoot, then! If you want to call my bluff, you better put it between my eyes. Oh! That was too much, and he turned on his heel and entered his hotel. "Yeah, that's right, Jack! Get out of here, Trent!" Like, even if he had a gun, he wouldn't have done it. Like, walks up to someone, tries to strangle them so I can rob them. They overpower me. They tell me, they shoot people like you, and I say, "Shoot then." Refuses to elaborate further. It's more human than many of the other stories, less dream. I mean, this isn't even like King in Yellow. This feels like completely different setup and story. It is just a wartime, like an 1890s or 1870s, 1870s wartime, like drama. It's this war of the King in Yellow. Like, I'm loving it. Groping up the unlighted stairway, he at last reached his own landing and felt about in the darkness at the door. From his studio came the sound of voices, West's hearty laugh and Fallowby's chuckle, and at last he found the knob and pushed back the door, stood a moment confused by the light. "Hello, Jack!" cried West. "You're a pleasant creature, inviting people to dine and letting them wait. Here's Fallowby weeping with hunger." "Shut up," observed the latter. "Perhaps he's been out to buy a turkey." "He's been out garroting. Look at his noose," laughed Guernalec. "So now we know where you get your cash," added West. "Vive la coup de père français." Français? Yeah. Vive la coup de père français. Trent shook hands with everybody and laughed at Sylvia's pale face. "I didn't mean to be late. I stopped on the bridge a moment to watch the bombardment. Were you anxious, Sylvia?" She smiled and murmured, "Oh no," but her hand dropped into his and tightened convulsively. "To the table!" shouted Fallowby and uttered a joyous whoop. "Take it easy," observed Thorne, with a remnant of manners. "You are not the host. You're not the host, you know." Marie Guernalec, who had been chattering with Colette, jumped up and took Thorne's arm, and Monsieur Guernalec drew Odile's arm through his. Trent, bowing gravely, offered his own arm to Colette. West took in Sylvia, and Fallowby hovered anxiously in the rear. He is what? 2, 4, 6, 8. He is 9th wheeling. No one wants him there. No one wants him there, so he is 9th wheeling. Fallowby suggested that they could sing after dinner, but his protest was drowned in the ringing chorus. So they're singing like a marching song. "All armée, Formez vos bataillons. Marchons, marchons. Around the room they march singing. Right, so it's a marching song because they're at war. With all their might, while Fallowby, with very bad grace, hammered on the table, consoling himself a little with the hope that the exercise would increase his appetite. Hercules, the black and tan, fled under the bed, from which retreat he yapped and whined until dragged out by Guernalec and placed in Odile's lap. And now, said Trent gravely, when everyone was seated, listen, and he read the menu. Ooh. Beef soup à la Sige de Paris, fish, sardines à la Perlenche, white wine, roti, red wine, fresh beef à la Chote, vegetables, canned beans à la Chase pot, canned peas gravelette, potatoes, Irish potatoes, miscellaneous, cold corned beef à la Thers, stewed prunes de la Garibaldi. For dessert, it's dried prunes with white bread, currant jelly, tea, so coffee, liquors, pipes, and cigarettes. Yeah, this is all just preserved food and like a little bit of like liquor and cigarettes. It is the French national anthem, the Marseillaise. It did originate as the marching song of the Army of the Rhine during the French Revolution. Ooh. Fallowby applauded frantically, and Sylvia served the soup. Isn't it delicious? Sighed Odile. Marie Guernalec sipped her soup in rapture. Not at all like horse, and I don't care what they say. Horse doesn't taste like beef, whispered Colette to West. Fallowby, who had finished, began to caress his chin and eye the tureen. Have some more, old chap? Inquired Trent. Monsieur Fallowby cannot have any more, announced Sylvia. I am saving this for the concierge. Fallowby transferred his eyes to the fish. Okay, first off base, Sylvia. You are celebrating, so you have a bunch of food. Not great food, but you still have a bunch of food. And you're like, I'm going to give this to the concierge because the concierge is important to our house. Also, did you know that pre-car, so 1870s, 1890s, the horse industry was obviously massive. There's people whose entire job was to be like horse doctors, like vets. There's people who are grooming horses. There are people who are cleaning up after horses in towns. There are people who, when a horse died, their job was to go get the dead horse body, bring it to a horse butcher. The butcher would butcher the horse, but they wouldn't give it to people. Generally, what you would do is that, depending on where you were and what time period, and obviously a bunch of regionality, horse meat was used to feed animals. Not just like pigs in slop, but also they would mince horse meat and feed it to stray cats or house cats because they would deal with vermin. So that would be an incentive in order to keep cats around, would be feeding them horse meat. So the fact that they're eating horse is actually like there is an industry set up to produce horse meat. It's just a matter of they're in like a starving city. So they have to have horse, they have to have rat, they have to have presumably a cat just to survive. Not as bad as Leningrad, World War II, which were reduced to eating boot leather. Yeah. We need an arrow reaction to Chanson de l'Oignon sometime. So after I finish King in Yellow, which I'm gonna finish King in Yellow presumably next week, because I think that this is the 8th story. Actually, I think it's gonna probably take me 2 weeks. But after King in Yellow, I want to keep reading. I want to keep reading 19th century literature because that's public domain. So it might be Dracula, it might be Frankenstein, it might be Moby Dick. Someone mentioned on the Discord, which could be fun. And there's a very particular chapter where it's very sussy language. Like, honestly, I want this time to be where I can read for the community just to have fun and have like a nice reading stream for members. But also, I want it to be my ability to be able to say like, yeah, I've read classic literature. I have read 19th century literature, 17th century literature, 18th century literature. Because a lot of them I haven't. A lot of them, like in school, fun fact, when I was in school, I had required reading for English classes. And out of my entire K through 12 curriculum, this is mostly surrounding high school because I don't actually remember much of earlier in terms of what I did or not. I read one book out of my entire high school reading curriculum. And that was like probably like 4 to 6 books a year. I read one of them. I did well on my tests. I used online resources and I like looked up notes and summaries about the books in order to get the point across so I could write my essays.
but I did not read them because I didn't want to read them. I was like being forced to read them. Why would I read that? So I think that this is actually a really good opportunity to, on my own terms, on my own time, for my own reasons, go back and read these classics. Now, something like Animal Farm is something that I did read. And that was in like middle school. And that's also post public domain. Even if I do this for 2 more years, I think that we're going to get to 1927, or maybe 1937. I think it's 90 years. Basically, my point is, even if I'm doing this for multiple years, I'm not going to get to the point where like a lot of mid 20th century literature is on the table, right? Sussy language, my sussy mind heard Mo Dick instead of the actual book name. Mo Dick, more whales. Reading Jane Eyre killed my love of reading for a semester. Oh my gosh. And so can all of chat too if you read to them. Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it's surprisingly fun is to read like old school literature and just be like, not only what are my thoughts on what's my reaction to it? What are my thoughts on it? Like I could do it more like a audiobook. If I wanted, I could, instead of streaming it, I could record it. I could edit it together so I only use good takes and it's less rambly and I don't go on tangents like this. But I feel as though the stream is kind of more fun. At least it's easier for me. I don't know if it's more fun for you. I don't know if you would prefer for me to just read it and just kind of present it in my voice and have like an audiobook, or if you'd prefer for me to like read it and you can hear my reactions and me going like, what? Because I have plenty of that. What's up, SA? There's even an anime version of Girls Own Panzer. Oh no. The sardines hot from the grill were great. Ooh. Why did I never think of grilling sardines? Because when I think of sardines, I think of like in a tin, super salty. I've never had them. I only know that apparently they're super salty, super bad. But like on a griddle, on a stove, just like sear them up. And presumably if you have like extra stuff to put with them, you'd probably put them with some lemon, like an acid, right? I mean, I don't know if sardines would go well with like Old Bay seasoning, which is a very classic like salmon seasoning, but I don't actually know how to prepare sardines. I've only ever heard of them and I assumed that it was just like you eat them cold, just right out of the tin, which doesn't make much sense because do you have to like descale sardines? And do you have to like chop off the head? Because like when you catch like a trout or a cod or whatever, you scale it, you chop off the head, you have to like take out the bones, you have to like prepare the fish. Do you have to do that with sardines? Or when they're put in the cans and the tins, is that just like you take them, you take them out of the tin, pat them dry, sear them like fish? Ah. Well, welcome on in, DP. Also, hey, a sneaky. Also, I don't think I said hi, Can. While the others were eating, Sylvia ran downstairs with the soup for the old concierge and her husband, and when she hurried back, flushed and breathless, and had slipped into her chair with a happy smile at Trent, that young man arose and silence fell over the table. For an instant, he looked at Sylvia and thought he had never seen her so beautiful. You all know, he began, that today is my wife's 19th birthday. Also, I want to say, real quick, Trent is 22. Sylvia's 19. I would think that's a little weird, personally. But this is the 18th century, or this is the 19th century. You are probably the least problematic relationship thus, like to date. I will say, there was someone who was like in his mid to late 20s that was like trying to get married to like a 17-year-old. That was not okay. The fact that you are only a 3-year age difference, which I think this like the range of like 17 to 21 is one of those areas where like, yeah, even if you're only like 3 years different, you have so much different life experience, particularly in the modern day, where like if you have a high school senior and you have a college junior, like a university junior student, I feel as though they probably shouldn't be together, purely because of the difference in life experience and what their responsibilities are and their assumed emotional maturity. If you have someone who joined the workforce right after high school and they've been working for 2 years and they're dating like a high school junior. They might only be 3-4 years apart, but just the level of maturity is so different. Whereas that's not really an issue if you have like a 13 and a 16-year-old or like a 20 and a 23-year-old. That being said, for the 1900s, for the 1800s, for the 19th century, so much better. So much better than everything we've seen up to date. So you get a pass. The bar is so low that you just kind of like walking at a normal pace and like just walking normally, not even doing anything that's like above the average, you passed it. Opinion on half your age plus 7? Okay. I think that doesn't... I've heard it before. If you don't know, half your age plus 7 is the idea of the ideal range of what is acceptable for you to date is you take your age, you half it, you add 7. That is the minimum age you can date. So if you're 30, half your age is 15 plus 7 is 22. I'm a little bit of the opinion that once you hit your mid 20s, everything is game. Like, yeah, is it weird if a 28-year-old is dating like a 55-year-old? Sure. But I also don't think that's inappropriate. I don't think that it's wrong if, like, upon meeting and upon getting to know each other and upon starting dating, like, the youngest person was like in their mid-20s or later. I hope that you can't hear that, though I think you just did. The cars are going crazy. Yeah, it does permit 20 and 17, which is yikes. That's what I'm saying. I'm basically saying, like, I think that the range of like 17 to 21 is the gray area. Basically anything below that, you're so young that as long as you're within a couple of years, it's probably fine. And then if you're above that, everyone's kind of lived on a similar level of life experience, right? So like if a 40-year-old is with like a 25-year-old, that would not be within the range because half of 40 plus 7 would be 27. But I feel as though a 25-year-old and a 40-year-old, like, yeah, they have different life experience, but they're both adults. That 25-year-old has experience of being, presumably has experience living by themselves and or having a job and or being university educated. So like, I think it's a little bit like, but it's not inappropriate. I don't think, but however, I would say like a 21-year-old and a 40-year-old would be inappropriate. Even though a 21-year-old is an adult. In the US, they can legally drink. And in the US, they're expected to either be in university or in the workforce or oftentimes or very early 20s, there's this pressure to move out of your family home in the US. So that I would consider inappropriate because that 21-year-old doesn't have the life experience, even if they're like emotionally mature for their age. I just think it's a situation where I think that the half plus 7, broadly speaking, is good for guidelines, but I feel like just once you're like 25 and up, maybe even like 26, 27 and up, it just doesn't matter. Horrid 15% difference. It gets less problematic the older the youngest. Exactly. And if a 30-year-old is dating a 70-year-old, I don't care. Like, is that probably a situation where the 30-year-old is a gold digger trying to get insurance money from the 70-year-old? Probably, but that's their choice. And if you're 70 and you're dating someone that is 40 years younger than you, you either are aware of that and are comfortable with that, or you're trying to be predatory on someone that could be your grandchild so that it's not very cash money of you, or you are just such an absolute sweetheart that I'm so sorry this is happening to you. But I feel like that's not very common. 2017 really isn't that questionable. Age of consent being... Well, no, so that's what I'm saying, is I'm not saying legally. I am saying vibes-wise. If you told me a 17-year-old was dating a 20-year-old, I'm sorry. I have to go all out just this once. So if you're 17, you're in high school, you just started driving, if you drive at all, if you have any work experience, it's probably part-time. Meanwhile, if you're 20, even though this is only 3 years older, you're either working, or you're in trade school, or you're in university. You have a job, and if you don't have a job, then you probably have some work experience. You have something to occupy your time. You have a greater level of autonomy, not just societally, but also legally, where if you commit a crime, you are legally responsible, whereas a 17-year-old commits a crime, their parents or guardian is legally responsible for them. There's a completely different frame of mind of how you interface with society, people in the world when you are a minor versus when you are slightly older. And I'm not saying that like if like a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old are dating, that's wrong. That's like bad morally. What I'm saying is, personally to me, that's vibes. That's weird vibes. If you can die for your country, you can bang someone's grandmother. Heck yeah. Let's go back to the sardines recipe. The one I heard was, if the grades don't touch, the students don't touch. I mean, I think that's a bit harsh because, like, for instance, even like there's the classic like a high school senior dating a high school freshman. That makes basically everyone uncomfortable, even though they're all like 3 to 4 years apart, right? Because it's different life experience. And in the same token, I would say a high school senior and a college senior is a similar jump of experience. Meanwhile, a high school sophomore and an 8th grader, that's a 2-year difference. And neither of them really has the level of autonomy that is like neither of them have had the same trials and tribulations, societally speaking. They might individually have those, but like societally, they're not expected to go through different life events. So that's less weird. But I do feel as though if you have like this jump from graduating high school into something else, or you have gone through all of high school and you're dating someone who's a freshman, that's kind of weird. If you're a 22-year-old, similarly, I think like 30 plus is a bit old for you. I mean, maybe that you're interested in older people, you want someone with more experience. I know particularly in the queer community, it's very common for gay men to have like twink/bear, or like young/old is a very common relationship dynamic in gay men. And if they're both consenting adults, it's not my place to tell them what to do. But I personally, when I look at that, I get weird vibes if the younger person is too young, independent of how old the older person is, right? Dating anyone under 20 outside of Romeo and Juliet. Okay, so when you say Romeo and Juliet situation, I assume you mean the 4 years. And like the half plus 7 is basically an expanding thing over time, because the older you are, the wider it gets. Because when you're, say, 25, half plus 7 would be 12.5 plus 7 is 19.5, so 19.5. And then the upper age limit would be subtract 7 and times 2. So that would be 18 times 2 is 36. So if you're 25, your acceptable age range would be 19.5 to 36. So that would be 16.5 years. Whereas if you're 40, half plus 7 is 27. And then 33 times 2 is 66. So that would be 39 years of acceptable age range. So it is a situation where the older you are, the wider your range is. And I think that's chill. But like if a 40-year-old is dating a 67-year-old, that's not weird. At least to me. Like it's not as weird as like a 20-year-old dating. So if a 40-year-old is dating a 67-year-old, that's a 27-year age gap. I think that is less weird, even though it still falls out of this range, than a 21-year-old dating a 48-year-old, which is also a 27-year age gap. This age gap is older than the person has been alive. That's weird. Grades don't touch, like sophomore touches freshman and junior, so that's for a game. Junior touches sophomore and college and high school don't touch. Same with high school and middle. I mean, I don't feel like there's that big of a difference between a high school freshman and a 8th grader, for instance. But I do feel like there's a big difference between like a high school sophomore and a 7th grader. And part of that is age. Part of that is the fact that like once you hit like above or below middle school, graduating middle school is like 14, 15. That's a really sensitive time of their life where they can very easily be mistreated, and that's not very cash money. So we need to be careful. But no. I mean, eloping despite your aristocratic parents, that is super based. No, Cell, you're the one that brought up half plus 7. You can't be like, oh, probably Lovecraft. Also, this isn't Lovecraft. This is by Chambers. This is by William Chambers, a contemporary and actually before Lovecraft. Bill Belichick is 73 and his girlfriend is 24. That's the thing. Like, that is a 49-year difference. That makes me uncomfortable. However, if the girlfriend was 30, I don't know, like that only changes it from a 49-year difference to a 43-year difference, which is still a lot. It's still crazy. It's still double the person's age. That strikes me as significantly less creepy. And maybe it's just because if you're 30, you've probably like you have the life experience. You have so basically when you're a child, you have your life experience, and then when you're an adolescent, you spike up, and then you kind of plateau a bit in later, and it depends on, this is all averaging, this is conjecture, this is anecdotal, and then you spike up again in early 20s, and then you just kind of continue growing from there, and then you might have some spikes here and there, right? But the point is, when you're a child, you don't really grow too much, at least not to the same extent as you will later in life. When you're a teenager, you usually have a major spike, and then maybe you plateau for a bit as you're finding yourself out, and then you spike again, blah, blah, blah. And then in your 20s, when you have to get a job, when you're finding love, you might get married, you might, in the housing market, not buy a house, but struggle to pay rent. Like, this is another big period of growth. And even though these periods of growth will be eclipsed volume-wise by the rest of your life, they're sharper increases than the remainder of your life. And maybe you have like a midlife crisis. Maybe you have a situation where you have like a coming to faith moment, right? Like, you have periods later in your life where you do have massive short spans of character development. But broadly speaking, like 23, 24, 25, maybe 26, 27, this and before accounts for like most of your character development, right? What if you're a vampire? Then do you still grow and change in the same way a human does? Psychologically? Like, obviously physically you're the same, but psychologically, does being a vampire where you prey upon the people in your life mean that you do not take them as seriously as you would if you were still a person? Because if I am a person, for instance, me in my life, I would not have probably 75% or more of the changes and character traits I have in my life if it were not for the people in my life and me taking them and their concerns seriously. I would not be like 75% of the same person without those people who I hurt and I want to do better. Those people who hurt me and I don't want to be hurting them. Those people who I love and I want to care for. Those people who love me and want to support me. All of these relationships in my life, I treat them seriously because I'm a person, they're a person, they deserve my respect. And that has changed who I am significantly and guided who I am significantly. If I was a vampire, I probably wouldn't care about that. It came up in context and we could have moved on. Oh yeah, oh gosh, my model. It came up where it was a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old. I'm like, that's the best we're gonna get, isn't it? So if you're a vampire and you don't care about the people in your life, I don't think you're gonna find that same change. Can be stuck in the mindset, psychology, personality at the time of their turning, but in others they evolve more. I mean, honestly, like Vampire the Masquerade is a great example of vampires who are not stuck in that mindset, but they just kind of become disillusioned. How many come to God moments can you have if every 10 to 15 years, everyone in your life dies, moves on, or learns to hate you, or you have to walk away from them? How many character changes, how many moments of introspection can you have until the well is empty and there's nothing left? How many times can you drain someone dry and feel pity or regret or guilt over it before you realize this is just gonna happen every couple years? This is just what I am now, right? Middle and high school gives everyone the ick, yeah.
I feel as though middle and high school is basically one of those things where unless it's like you started dating like 7th and 8th grader and then the 8th grader graduates and then now you're like an 8th grader and a freshman, I feel like anything else is kind of super unacceptable personally, because the freshman middle school dynamic is not like the freshman 8th grader dynamic isn't super crazy because freshmen are little babies. Freshmen in high school are babies, just like middle schoolers are babies. And I did not realize this when I was a high school freshman. I realized this once I was like a high school junior, a high school senior. Like high school freshmen are babies, just in the same way that I look at high schoolers and I'm like, you're babies, you're children. What are you doing? If your generations touch, it's fair game in Vampire. If you're 6 in the progenitor Cain and dating Gen 8, that's disgusting. Listen, simply bloodbind them and they will love you independent of generation. Do not do this. That is coercive. Just got here. Why are we talking about school romance? So in 19th century literature, in The King in Yellow, we had a situation where this guy is 22 and his wife is 19. And her birthday is today. She's 19. So we don't know how long he's been 22. He could have just turned 22. His birthday could be tomorrow. We don't know. So he might almost be 23. He is 22. His wife is about to turn 19. That's weird. However, it is only a 3-year age gap in a setting in the 1890s and 1870s, written by someone who's written other stories in the same anthology that featured romances between people who were like, she's 17, he's 26. So I'm gonna take it. That's what got us on this. I'm gonna take the it's like a 3.5 year age gap and it's kind of weird, but ultimately it's not as harmful as the other ones. Arrow couldn't stop. Generations do not actually define your age. Well, yeah. We blood bonding? No, I'm not blood bonding my chat. If you are going to slavishly devote yourself to me, you are going to do so out of your own free will. I will still absolutely exploit this for my own benefit. That is what the cult is for. That is what the mafia is for. But I will not coerce, mind control, bloodbind, and or force your hand. I will simply be so radiant in your life. I will be the sun in your sky, the moon among your stars, that you will be compelled to follow such inspirational acquiescence to the sheer state of creativity that I bring about in my every word and verb and sentence. You already got the knife out. You can be a Zoomer turned by someone who's alive in Jesus era and be... Listen, you can be a Gen Alpha literal actual child that gets turned by like an antediluvian and you become a Generation 4 Methuselah. And you will be one of the most powerful beings in the world of darkness as like a 12-year-old. Although something that speaking of age, I just want to mention this real quick. In my World of Darkness world, something that I did is that vampires don't age. And something that I do in my games, which I think is just worth mentioning just because personal preference, we're on the subject, why not? I make it so that you continue to age until your body naturally reaches its like peak. So if you get turned when you're like 13, you're still going to grow up to be like 20-ish, 22-ish, because I don't like the idea of turning someone when they're like 8 and then they're like a 1,000-year-old vampire in an 8-year-old's body. That makes me uncomfortable. Personally, I think that's weird. Best thing I've ever said. Thank you. Aren't all YouTubers mindworms? Would we still love Arrow if I were a mindworm? I'm not a mindworm. At worst, I'm a siren. Although I have been accused of being a vampire quite regularly, and I think that is kind of my domineering nature. So less mind control, more Scientology. Exactly. I only devote myself to my own and mine. You are a funny internet person. Eclipse. You solve parasociality. Everyone applaud. Everyone thank Eclipse for covering over the moon of inspiration with the sun of inadequacy that I brought forth in my creative endeavors. If you're a siren, then why don't you look like cheese? Okay, but Gen Alpha Army of Doom would be really funny. Doesn't that make vampire kids almost like Dampier, half vampire until they come back? No, I would say they're still fully vampire. I would say they're still fully vampire. It's just the way the blood interfaces with their body, their like neurons are still firing. Their blood is still actively growing them. If they're like a 16-year-old, they'll still grow for like 5 more years, 6 more years, 7 more years. Like basically brain development. Because otherwise that would be kind of weird. I'm not a mindworm, says the mindworm. Okay, what I will say, I do have the idea for if I were to start a bit of content, if I was to start an actual play. I already did the False Hydra. I did the False Hydra off stream. I feel like if I was to try to do the False Hydra again, one, it wouldn't hit the same because I've already done it. I'm someone who, when I run TTRPGs, even if it's not the same group, I will run it differently. I don't run the same adventure twice, not for them, but for me. I run it because I need to be excited. If I know what's going to happen, why would I run it again? Right? So I tend to run adventures only once, so I'm not going to try to do a False Hydra again. But what I could do, a lot of people are talking about a true Hydra, adding characters, people just coming out of nowhere, always having been there. The Brainworms episode from Rick and Morty. And I think that would be really fun to do on like an actual play. Also, buy your headcanon, Twilight cannot exist. Good. It doesn't deserve to exist. They still need blood as milk to grow up big and strong. The vampire curse prevents decay, doesn't prevent growth. So it does. In World of Darkness. I need to shut up. I need to just read. In World of Darkness, when you die, your body is stuck like that. Up to and including, like if you cut your hair will grow back the next night. Up to and including, if your limb gets blown off, the next night, your limb will grow back. Up to and including, if you had a sunburn, you will be stuck with a sunburn for all eternity. Which is why, like, vampires tend to have a look, is because even if you, like, get turned and you had, like, massive crazy hair, and you want a buzz cut, you want to go bald for a bit, you have to shave your head every single morning, or every single evening, because the Curse of Cain basically locks you in stasis as you were when you died. Which I don't like, personally. I like the idea of you can change it. Well, so the reason I say that is because canonically in Vampire the Masquerade, there is a famous vampire that had a really bad, massive sunburn across his face. And he has lived for like 1,000 years with this like first degree burn sunburn kind of deal, like on his face, that is constantly paining and hurting him. And if anyone brings it up to him, is like, hey, what's up on your face? Or like, how's the sunburn? He'll just kill them because he's done this for 1,000 years and he hates it. Arrow in chat is that one Batman run where the villains are paid by Alfred. Arrow is, of course, Batman. Oh my gosh. Like home games, same arcs, but tailored to the individual parties, and it was so fire. Oh, Nyx, when she had free time, ran the same game for 2 parties. Monday and Thursday was actually kind of incredible, especially guessing on each other's games. I mean, what I really want to do, I love the idea of running for Group X, running for Group Y, running different things for them in the same world, and then having them interface. And this is what I did. This is what I was supposed to do when I was playing in a one-on-one game, where I played my Warlock. I've talked about this guy before. His name is Cecil. He was a leader of a cult, but it totally wasn't a cult. It was just a group of therapy for helping people with a green fire that talked to them and told them how to solve their issues. I started as a villain. I started as a one-on-one game as a villain where the main party was going to encounter me. I would fight them, and then I would lose because they're the main party. I'm just a villain. And then I would either live or die, continue on, or I'm dead, whatever. I might become a recurring antagonist. But what ended up happening is I ended up encountering them. We resolved things amicably because my character was not a fighter. My character was a social character. And I was so into RP and narrative that my DM actually liked running for me more than they enjoyed running for the other group, because the other group had a bunch of murder hobos.
So what ended up happening is I started as just like I'm going to be a minor antagonist that comes in, messes with their group, leaves. Maybe I come back, maybe I don't, doesn't really matter. And it ended up being, I just did my own completely unique thing. Humble brag? Not less humble brag, more just contextual. Because like, that's not hard when the other group is just a bunch of murder hobos. Like, it wasn't that I was so good at the game that they just absolutely fell in love with me. It was that the other group was sucked. Like, if you're dealing with a group where their default reaction is just kill everything that you put in front of them, and they say they have character motivations, but then continuously ignore their character motivations in favor of what would be funny in the moment, it's very easy to have a DM who wants to tell a story prefer you. Even if I wasn't good at it, even if I sucked, that's still better than being a murder hobo. I heard a D&D story of someone doing that with a DM having two parties, one plus a party with the former as a villain, with the DM planning to get them to fight together. I've wanted to do that too. I want good party, bad party, eventually they fight. Also, that's how you get the head of Vecna. The head of Vecna was we have party X, we have party Y. Party X sets up a rumor about the head of Vecna, just like the hand and eye of Vecna, plants it in a dungeon, sets up a bunch of traps, leaves. Party Y hears about the rumor, goes to find the head of Vecna, which was just a random chopped off head that the party like set up and like took the eye out of to make it seem like it was the head of Vecna. And then Party Y proceeded to behead two of their own in order to put the head of Vecna on them because they thought it was real, when in actuality, it was the other players screwing with them. Crazy stuff. DMs dig chicks into role. Yeah, I suppose. If you reset every day, how does that work with vicissitude? Vicissitude overcomes that. Vicissitude is changing the physical form. It is not just like altering your hair or having like a tan or whatever. I think vicissitude definitely overcomes that. I just don't know if it's exactly because it's like the vitae doing that, like you alter the blood. Not having to deal with hair and nail growth is pretty neat, unless of course you want to change hairstyle. And that's the thing, West Marches. So not quite West Marches. West Marches is... Stop. This is why I don't read on public streams, because I get distracted. A West Marches is a situation where you have, say, 12 players, and Celerity Dust says, hey, I want to go do X. Who's coming with? And then DP and Horace and Gokbei all say, we'll come with you. So then of the 12 players, 4 of them do X. And I run for them. And it's fun. And they have a plot beat. Then following that up, Horace says, I want to go do Y off the tails of X. And maybe Cell can't make it, and DP's busy, and Gokbei is uninterested. So then Horace grabs Draconic, Can, and Eclipse. Now you 4 go off to do Y. And then completely independent of that, not related to that at all, we go to Z, where Gokbei grabs Eclipse and Draconic and Cell, and then you all play that. So you have this big pool of players that is constantly divided based on who's available, who's interested. Right? That's a West Marches. What I'm talking about is I have a group of DP, Cell, and Horace, and then I have a group of Wumpus, Gokbei, and Eclipse. And they are both completely separate. They're both normal groups that I'm running for separately, and then they encounter one another, which could be fun. Member only yapping stream accidental. It's not members only though. It is public because I made a mistake in creating this stream. Enjoy, Horace. Hey, I want to do X. Who wants to come with? Oh my gosh. You all know, he began, that today is my wife's 19th birthday. Falaby, bubbling with enthusiasm, waved his glass in circles about his head to the terror of Odile and Colette, his neighbors, and Thorn, West, and Gernalek refilled their glasses 3 times before the storm of applause with the toast of Sylvia had provoked subsided. 3 times the glasses were filled and emptied to Sylvia, and again to Trent, who protested. This is irregular, he cried. The next toast is to the twin republics, France and America. To the republics! To the republics, they cried. And the toast was drunk amid shouts of Viva la France! Viva l'Amérique! Viva l'Amérique! Amérique? America? Interesting. I'm familiar referring to America, like the US, as les États-Unis, the United States, the States United. Viva la France! Viva l'Amérique! Viva la nation! Then Trent, with a smile at West, offered the toast to a happy pair, and everyone understood, and Sylvia leaned over and kissed Colette. Sylvia leaned over and kissed Colette while Trent bowed to West. I was joking about the polycule. Huh? I mean, like, I'm here for it. Look at the thumbnail of the stream. I must say I wasn't expecting it to like actually be like Yuri on page. This is gay as heck. The beef was eaten in comparative calm, but when it was finished and a portion of it was set aside for the old people below, Trent cried, "Drink to Perry! May she rise from her ruins and crush the invader!" And the cheers rang out, drowning for a moment the monotonous thunder of the Prussian guns. Pipes and cigarettes were lighted, and Trent listened to an instant to the animated chatter around him, broken by ripples of laughter from the girls and the mellow chuckle of Fallowby. Then he turned to West. "There's going to be a sortie tonight," he said. "I saw the American ambulance surgeon just before I came in, and he asked me to speak to your fellows. Any aid we can give him will not come amiss." Yeah, I thought it was just a joke. They're just best manning for each other. Well, because like I don't know if you saw the short. I think it was the preamble to this stream. In The Mask, there is a comment where two men who are friends, one of them takes the other, pins him into the floor after they're like flirting with each other, right? And to me, that's yaoi. But they didn't kiss. They didn't say that they loved each other. It was very much so like me being delusional for the sake of content. However, this is literally two women kissing. And I am obsessed. Then, dropping his voice and speaking in English, "As for me, I shall go out with the ambulance tomorrow morning. There is, of course, no danger, but it's just as well to keep it from Sylvia." West nodded. Thorne and Guernalec, who had heard, broke in and offered assistance, and Fallowby volunteered with a groan. "All right," said Trent rapidly. "No more now, but meet me at ambulance headquarters tomorrow night at 8. Sylvia and Colette, who were becoming uneasy at the conversation in English, now demanded to know what they were talking about. "What does a sculptor usually talk about?" cried West with a laugh. Odile glanced reproachfully at Thorne, her fiancé. "You are not friends, yet you are not French, you know, and it is none of your business, this war," said Odile with much dignity. Thorne looked meek, but West assumed an air of outraged virtue. "It seems," he said to Fallowby, "that a fellow cannot discuss the beauties of Greek sculpture in his mother tongue without being openly suspected." Colette placed her hand over her mouth and turned to Sophia, muttering, "They're horribly untruthful, these men." The queens know what their court is up to. The women will not be gaslit this day, this time, this century. Also toxic yaoi. Exactly. "I believe the word for ambulance is the same in both languages," said Marie Guernalec saucily. "Sylvia, don't trust Monsieur Trent." Ah! Not the saucily. "Jack," whispered Sylvia, "promise me." A knock on the studio door interrupted her. "Come in," cried Fallowby, but Trent sprang up and, opening the door, looked out. Then, with a hasty excuse to the rest, he stepped into the hallway and closed the door. When he returned, he was grumbling. "What is it, Jack?" cried West. "What is it?" replied Trent savagely. "I'll tell you what it is. I've received a dispatch from the American minister to go at once and identify and claim, as a fellow countryman and a brother artist, a rascally thief and a German spy." "Don't go," suggested Fallowby. "If I don't, they'll shoot him at once." "Let them," growled Thorne. Do you fellows know who it is?" "Hartman!" shouted West, inspired. Sylvia sprang up deathly white, but Odile slipped her arm around her and supported her to a chair, saying calmly, "Sylvia's fainted. It's the hot room. Bring some water." Trent brought it at once. Sylvia opened her eyes and, after a moment, rose and, supported by Marie Guernalec and Trent, passed into the bedroom. It was a signal for breaking up, and everybody came and shook hands with Trent, saying they hoped Sylvia would sleep it off and that it would be nothing. When Marie Guernalec took leave of him, she avoided his eyes, but he spoke to her cordially and thanked her for her aid. "Anything I can do, Jack?" inquired West, lingering, and then hurried downstairs to catch up with the rest. Listen, West,
You might not be the biggest Chad in this story. You're up there. That Gaiman, that child, that was probably the biggest dick energy out of everyone here. However, you have muscles upon your muscles, and when you enter a room, when you flex, the entire room shifts on instinct in accordance with the shifting of your muscles. I need you to not misunderstand. I think you're a Giga Chad. It just so happens that when you try to strangle someone and they threaten to shoot you, so you say, shoot me, that's just, you can't beat that. I'm sorry. But you're still here. Like yeah. you still have aura. It's just, you don't have as much aura, you know? You're not aura farming. And like, just being there, anything I can do, Jack? Boom. Mad aura. Trent leaned over the banisters, listening to their footsteps and chatter, and then the lower door banged and the house was silent. He lingered, staring down into the blackness, biting his lips. Then, with an impatient movement, "Oh, I am crazy," he muttered, and lighting a candle went into the bedroom. Sylvia was lying on the bed. He bent over her, smoothing the curly hair on her forehead. "Are you better, dear Sylvia?" She did not answer, but raised her eyes to his. For an instant, he met her gaze, but what he read there sent a chill to his heart, and he sat down, covering his face with his hands. At last she spoke in a voice changed and strained, a voice which he had never heard, and he dropped his hands and listened, bolt upright in his chair. "Jack is come at last. I feared it and trembled. I have lain awake at night with this on my heart and prayed that I might die before you should ever know of it. For I love you, Jack, and if you go away, I cannot live. I have deceived you. It happened before I knew you, but since that first day when you found me weeping in the Luxembourg and spoke to me, Jack, I've been faithful to you in every thought and deed. I loved you from the first and did not dare tell you this, fearing that you would go away. And since then, my love has grown, and oh, I suffered, but I dared not tell you. And now you know, but you do not know the worst. For him, now what do I care? He was cruel, oh so cruel." She hid her face in his arms. "Must I go on? Must I tell you? Can you not imagine? Oh, Jack." He did not stir. His eyes seemed dead. "I was so young, I knew nothing. He said that he loved me." Trent rose and struck the candle with his clenched fist. The room was dark. "The girl got her heart played with. She had an F-boy." The bells of St. Sulpice tolled the hour, and she started up, speaking with feverish haste. "I must finish. When you told me you loved me, you asked me nothing. But then, even then, it was too late. And that other life which binds me to him must stand forever between you and me. She's pregnant." That's what I thought it was going to be Trent's, but it wasn't Trent's. Oh my gosh. "For there is another whom he has claimed, and is good to. He must not die. They cannot shoot him." It was Hartman? Wait. Ah! Hartman, the guy that West was fighting, who didn't pay up, despite the fact he was obligated to support the ambulance, because these are all Americans in Paris, and then they're all trying their best to contribute to the war, to the relief effort. Hartman was with Sylvia, told her he loved her. They slept together, maybe more than once, got her pregnant. Now Trent is enraptured. I was not expecting this turn of events. Trent sat motionless, but his thoughts ran out in an interminable whirl. Sylvia, little Sylvia, who shared with him his student life, who bore with him the dreary desolation of the siege without complaint. This slender, blue-eyed girl, whom he was so quietly fond of, whom he teased or caressed as the whim suited, or who sometimes made him the least bit impatient with her passionate devotion to him. Could this be the same Sylvia who lay weeping there in the darkness? Then he clenched his teeth. Let him die. Let him die. But then, for Sylvia's sake, and for that other's sake, yes, he would go. He must go. His duty was plain for him. But Sylvia, he could not be what he had been to her, and
Yet a vague terror seized him. Now all was said. Trembling, he struck a light. She lay there, her curly hair tumbled about her face, her small white hands pressed to her breast. He could not leave her, and he could not stay. He never knew before that he loved her. She had been a mere comrade, this girl wife of... What? Wait. What? So, Sylvia, your wife, slept with Hartford prior to getting married, prior to meeting you. She fell in love with you, but kissed Colette. You never loved her until you realize now that she is pregnant with another man's child from before when you got together. West, who is very clearly your true interest, just going off of the yaoi here, is here to support you in whatever way he can, presumably like a double lavender wedding where the gents are together, the ladies are together, but she... Why had she been a mere She had been a mere comrade, this girl wife of his. You married her, not loving her. Is this an Eldritch horror story or an interpersonal drama? This is a soap opera at this point, and I'm here for it. What the heck? He loved her now with all his heart and soul, and he knew it only when it was too late. Too late? Why? Then he thought of that other one, binding her, linking her forever to the creature who stood in danger of his life. With an oath, he sprang to the door, but the door would not open. Or was it that he pressed it back, locked it, and flung himself on his knees beside the bed, knowing that he dared not, for his life's sake, leave what was all his life? Well, knowing that he dared not, for his life's sake, leave what was his all in life. The king is just sitting back eating popcorn, I guess. The real horror in The King in the Yellow, it turns your life into a Hallmark film. I'm not gonna lie, I am eating this up. Like, I am obsessed with this. The only reason I stopped is because we were going on a rant. We were going on a tangent, right? This might be my favorite story thus far. Like, it might be beating out The Mask. It was 4 a.m. when he came out of the prison of the condemned with the secretary of the American legation. A knot of people had gathered around the American minister's carriage, which stood in front of the prison, the horses stamping and pawing in the icy street, the coachman huddled on the box, wrapped in furs. Southwark helped the secretary into the carriage and shook hands with Trent, thanking him for coming. How the scoundrel did stare, he said. Your evidence was worse than a kick, but it saved his skin for the moment at least, and prevented complications. The secretary sighed. We've done our part. Now let them prove him a spy and we wash our hands clean of him. Jump in, Captain. Come along, Trent. I have a word to say to Captain Southwark. I won't detain him, said Trent hastily and dropping his voice. Southwark, help me now. You know the story from the blackguard. You know the child is at his rooms. Get it and take it to my apartment, and if he is shot, I will provide a home for it. I understand, said the captain gravely. Will you do this at once? At once, he replied. Their hands met in a warm clasp, and then Captain Southwick climbed into the carriage, motioning Trent to follow, but he shook his head, saying, goodbye, and the carriage rolled away. He watched the carriage to the end of the street, then started towards his own quarter, but after a step or two, hesitated, stopped, and finally turned away in the opposite direction. Something, perhaps it was the sight of the prisoner he had so recently confronted, nauseated him. He felt the need for solitude and quiet to collect his thoughts. The event of the evening had shaken him terribly, but he could walk it off, forget, bury everything, then go back to Sylvia. He started on swiftly, and for a time, the bitter thoughts seemed to fade, but when he paused at last, breathless, under the Arc de Triomphe, the bitterness and the wretchedness of the whole thing, yes, of his whole misspent life, came back with a pang. Then the face of the prisoner, stamped with the horrible grimace of fear, grew in the shadows before his eyes. Okay, bro, you're 22. Chill. Sick at heart, he wandered up and down the great arc, striving to occupy his mind, peering up at the sculpted cornices to read the names of the heroes and battles, which he knew were engraved there, but always the ashen face of Hartman followed him, grinning with terror. Or was it terror? Was it not triumph? At the thought, he leaped like a man who feels a knife at his throat, but after a savage tramp around the square, came back again and sat down to battle with his misery. The air was cold, but his cheeks were burning with angry shame. Shame?
Why? Was it because he had married a girl whom chance had made a mother? Did he love her? Was this miserable bohemian experience at his end and aim in life? He turned his eyes upon the secrets of his heart, and read an evil story, the story of the past, and he covered his face for shame, while keeping time to the dull pain throbbing in his head. His heart beat out of the story of the future. Shame and disgrace. Roused at last from a lethargy which had begun to numb the bitterness of his thoughts, he raised his head and looked about. A sudden fog had settled in the street. The arches of the arch were choked with it. He would go home. A great horror of being alone seized him. But he was not alone. The fog was peopled with phantoms. All around him in the mist they moved, drifting through the arches in lengthening lines, and vanished. And from the fog others rose up, swept past and were engulfed. He was not alone. Not even at his side they crowded, touched him, swarmed before him, beside, behind, and pressed him back, seized and bore him through the mist. Down a dim avenue, through lanes and alleys white with fog, they moved, and if they spoke, their voices were dull as the vapor which shrouded them. At last, in front, a bank of masonry and earth, cut by a massive iron-barred gate, towered up in the fog. Slowly and more slowly they glided, shoulder to shoulder and thigh to thigh. Then all movement ceased. A sudden breeze stirred the fog. It wavered and eddied. Objects became more distant. A pallor crept along the horizon, touching the edges of the watery clouds, and drew dull sparks from 1,000 bayonets. Bayonets. They were everywhere, cleaving the fog, or flowing beneath it in rivers of steel. High on the wall of masonry and earth, a great gun loomed, and around it, figures moved in silhouettes. Below, a broad torrent of bayonets swept through the iron-barred gateways out into the shadowy plain. It became lighter. Faces grew more distinct among the marching masses, and he recognized one. "You, Philippe!" The figure turned its head. Trent cried, "Is there room for me?" But the other only waved his arm in a vague adieu and was gone with the rest. Presently, the cavalry began to pass, squadron on squadron, crowding out into the darkness, then many cannon, then an ambulance, then again the endless lines of bayonets. Beside him, a cuirassier sat on his steaming horse. Is Philippe the one from Repair of Reputations? Is that the same Philippe? Beside him, a cuirassier sat on his steaming horse, and in front, among a group of mounted officers, he saw a general, with the astrakhan collar of his dolman turned up about his bloodless face. Some women were weeping near him, and one was struggling to force a loaf of black bread into his soldier's haversack. The soldier tried to aid her, but the sack was fastened, and his rifle bothered him, so Trent held it, while the woman unbuttoned the sack and forced in the bread, now all wet with her tears. The rifle was not heavy. Trent found it wonderfully manageable. Was the bayonet sharp? He tried it. Then a sudden longing, a fierce, imperative desire took possession of him. "Chouette!" cried a gamin, clinging to the barred gate. Encore toi mon vieux? Encore toi mon vieux? Encore toi mon vieux? Then Trent looked away, and the rat killer laughed in his face. When the soldier had taken the rifle again, and thanking him, ran hard to catch his battalion, he plunged into the throng about the gateway. "Are you going?" he cried to a marine who sat at the gutter bandaging his foot. "Yes." Then a girl, a mere child, caught him by the hand and led him into the cafe, which faced the gate. The room was crowded with soldiers, some white and silent, sitting on the floor, others groaning on their leather-covered sets. The air was sour and suffocating. "Choose," said the girl with a little gesture of pity. "They can't go." In a heap of clothing on the floor, he found a capote and kepi. She helped him buckle his knapsack, cartridge box, and belt, showed him how to load the chestpot rifle, holding it on her knees. When he thanked her, she started to her feet. "You're a foreigner." "American," he said, moving towards the door, but the child barred his way. "I'm a Breton. My father's up there with the cannon on the marine. He will shoot you if you are a spy." They faced each other for a moment. Then, sighing, he bent over and kissed the child. "I assume on like the forehead." "Pray for France, little one," he murmured, and she repeated with a pale smile. "For France and you, bon monsieur." He ran across the street and through the gateway. Once outside, he edged into line and shouldered his way along the road. A corporal passed, looked at him, repassed, and finally called an officer. "You belong to the 60th, growled the corporal, looking at the number on his kepi. "We have no use for franc tiers," added the officer, catching sight of his black trousers. "I wish to volunteer in place of a comrade," said Trent, and the officer shrugged his shoulders and passed on. Nobody paid much attention to him, one or two merely glancing at his trousers. The road was deep with slush and mud, plowed and torn by wheels and hoofs. A soldier in front of him wrenched his foot in an icy rut and dragged himself to the edge of the embankment groaning. The plain on either side of them was gray with melting snow. Here and there, behind dismantled hedge rows, stood wagons bearing white flags with red crosses. Sometimes the driver was a priest in a rusty hat and gown, sometimes a crippled mobile. Once they passed a wagon driver by a sister of charity. Silent, empty houses with great rents in their walls, and every window blank, huddled along the road. Further on, within the zone of danger, nothing of human habitation remained except here and there a pile of frozen bricks, or a blackened cellar choked with snow. For some time, Trent had been annoyed by the man behind him who kept treading on his heels. Convinced at last that it was intentional, he turned to remonstrate and found himself face to face with a fellow student of the Beaux Arts. Trent stared. "I thought you were in the hospital." The other shook his head, pointing to his bandaged jaw. "I see, you can't speak. Can I do anything?" The wounded man rummaged in his haversack and produced a crust of black bread. "He can't eat it. His jaw is smashed and he wants you to chew it for him," said the soldier next to him. Trent took the crust, grinding it in his teeth morsel by morsel, passed it back to the starving man. From time to time, mounted orderlies sped to the front, covering them with slush. It was a chilly, silent march through sodden meadows wreathed in fog. Along the railroad embankment came the ditch. Another column moved parallel to their own. Trent watched it, a somber mass, now distant, now vague, now blotted out in a puff of fog. Once for half an hour he lost it, but when it came again into view, he noticed a thin line detach itself from the flank and, bellying in the middle, swing rapidly to the west. At the same moment, a prolonged crackling broke out in the fog in front. Other lines began to slough off from the column, swinging east and west, and the crackling became continuous. A battery passed by at full gallop, and he drew back with his comrades to give it way. It went into action a little to the right of his battalion, and as the shot from the first rifle boomed through the mist, the cannon from the fortification opened with a mighty roar. An officer galloped by, shouting something which Trent did not catch, but he saw the ranks in front suddenly part company with his own and disappear into the twilight. More officers rode up and stood beside him, peering into the fog. Away in front, the crackling had become one prolonged crash. It was dreary waiting. Trent chewed some bread for the man behind, who tried to swallow and, after a while, shook his head, motioning Trent to eat the rest himself. A corporal offered him a little brandy and he drank it, but when he turned around to return the flask, the corporal was lying on the ground. Alarmed, he looked at the soldier next to him, who shrugged his shoulders and opened his mouth to speak, but something struck him and he rolled over in the ditch below. At the moment, the horse of one of the officers gave a bound and backed into the battalion, lashing out with its heels. One man was ridden down, another was kicked in the chest and hurled through their ranks. The officer sank his spurs into the horse, forcing him to the front again, where he stood trembling. The cannonade seemed to draw nearer. A staff officer, riding slowly up and down the battalion, suddenly collapsed in his saddle, clung to his horse's mane. One of his boots dangled, crimson and dripping, from the stirrup. Then, out of the mist in front, men came running. The roads, the fields, the ditches were full of them, and many of them fell. For an instant, he imagined he saw horsemen riding about like ghosts in the vapors beyond, and a man behind him cursed horribly, declaring he too had seen them and that they were Uhlans. But the battalion stood inactive, and the mist fell again over the meadows. The colonel sat heavily upon his horse, his bullet-shaped head buried in the astrakhan collar of his dolman, his fat legs sticking straight out in the stirrups. Jeez. The buglers clustered around him with bugles poised, and behind him a staff officer in a pale blue jacket smoked a cigarette and chatted with a captain of hussars. From the road in front came the sound of furious galloping, and an orderly reined up beside the colonel, who motioned him to the rear without turning his head. Then, on the left, a confused murmur arose, which ended in a shout. A hussar passed like wind, followed by another, and then squadron after squadron whirled by them into the sheeted mists. At that instant, the colonel reared in his saddle, the bugles clanged, and the whole battalion scrambled down the embankment, over the ditch and started across the soggy meadow. Almost at once, Trent lost his cap. Something snatched it from his head. He thought it was a tree branch. A good many of his comrades rolled over in the sludge and ice, and he imagined that they had slipped. One pitched right across his path, and he stopped to help him up, but the man screamed when he touched him, and an officer shouted, "Forward! Forward!" So he ran on again. It was a long jog through the mist, and he often obliged to shift his rifle. When at last they lay panting on the railroad embankment, he looked about him. He had felt the need of action, of a desperate physical struggle of killing, of crushing. He had been seized with a desire to fling himself among masses and tear right from left. He longed to fire, to use the thin, sharp bayonet of his chassis pot. He had not expected this. He wished to become exhausted, to struggle and cut off, incapable of lifting his arm. Then he had intended to go home. He heard a man say that half the battalion had gone down in the charge, and he saw another examining a corpse under the embankment. The body, still warm, was clothed in a strange uniform, but even when he noticed the spiked helmet lying a few inches further away,
He did not realize what had happened. The colonel sat on his horse a few feet to the left, his eyes sparkling under the crimson kepi. Trent heard him reply to an officer, "I can hold it, but another charge and I won't have enough men to sound a bugle." "Were the Prussians here?" Trent asked of a soldier who sat wiping the blood trickling from his hair. "Yes, the hussars cleaned them out. We caught their crossfire." "We're supporting a battery on the embankment," said another. Then the battalion crawled over the embankment and moved along the lines of twisted rails. Trent rolled up his trousers and tucked them into his woolen socks, but they halted again, and some of the men sat down on the dismantled railroad tracks. Trent looked for his wounded comrade from the Beaux-Arts. He was standing in his place, very pale. The cannonade had become terrific. For a moment, the mist lifted. He saw a glimpse of the 1st Battalion motionless on the railroad track in front, of regiments on either flank, and then, as the fog settled again, the drum beats and the music of the bugles began away on the extreme left. A restless movement passed among the troops, and the colonel threw up his arms, the drums rolled, and the battalion moved off through the fog. They were near the front now, for the 1st Battalion was firing as it advanced. Ambulances galloped through the base of the embankment to the rear. The hussars passed and repassed like phantoms. They were in the front at last, for all of them was movement and turmoil, while from the fog, close at hand, came cries and groans and crashing volleys. Shells fell everywhere, bursting along the embankment, splashing them with frozen sludge. Trent was terrified. He began to dread the unknown, which lay there crackling and flaming in obscurity. The shock of the cannon sickened him. He could even see the fog light up with a dull orange as the thunder shook the earth. It was near, he felt certain, for the colonel shouted, "Forward!" and the 1st Battalion was hastening into it. He felt its breath. He trembled, but hurried on. A fearful discharge in front terrified him. Somewhere in the fog, men were cheering, and the colonel's horse, streaming with blood, plunged about in the snow. Am I reading the play? I'm not reading the play. I'm reading the stories about the play. No. The thing about The King in Yellow is that the story, the anthology, the short stories, The King in Yellow, is about the effects of the play, The King in Yellow. I have not read The King in Yellow, and I would never read Act 2, even though I totally would. If someone handed me The King in Yellow, I would absolutely read it. If it is so good that it drives people mad, I gotta get on that. But the actual proper King in Yellow does not exist. Driving us crazier than we already are. A capote is a coat. Kelpie is a kepi is a hat. Also, she's Breton. Very unlikely coincidence. Chambers really had a thing for Brittany, as did every Victorian Reddit fair, because they're all born on the Isle of Eternal Darkness and Subjugation, Britain. The generals read the play, maybe. Although I do find it very funny that this random artist, who is an American in Paris and is supporting the American ambulance, just kind of, he had this moment of, he's just like, well, my life is over, better go die on the front lines, as all men want to do, right? The masculine urge to die in a blaze of glory, defending the point for your fellow men behind you, or to die out bleeding alone in the snow. Like, those are the male fantasies. And I feel that. Maybe it's because I grew up male socialized. Maybe it's because I'm non-binary. I'm not actually like a woman. But like, I vibe with that kind of average Crimean War experience for real. Chambers writes the chaos of war very well. Yeah, like at first I didn't realize that there was literally soldiers. At first I thought it was just phantoms in the mist. And then it was clear that there's actual people. And then Trent joined the war and I'm like, why? And then it got to the point where you're talking to someone, you turn away from them to drink the whiskey they offered you, and then you turn back to hand it to them and they're dead. Right? Oh, the guy next to you in response to that's like, that's how it goes, and then he's dead. And you're not even on the front line at that point. You're way far back. You're behind the hussars who are doing a charge of an entrenched German position, which, as far as I'm aware, is not even on the front line. One more hill up the top, lads. The masculine urge to capture the next hill over. Exactly. I would absolutely read Act 2. I do not have enough willpower. Okay, for me, it's not enough. It's not about the willpower to not read it. It's about the willpower to read it. Can you call yourself brave if you're the sort of person who refuses to do something that you were excited to do? I would call that cowardice. It is brave to not do something you know you shouldn't do. But it is braver still to do something that you know you should do. no matter the consequences. Another blast and shock right in his face almost stunned him, and he faltered. All the men to the right were down. His head swam. The fog and smoke stupefied him. He put out his hand for support and caught something. It was the wheel of a gun carriage, and a man sprang from behind it, aiming a blow at his head with a rammer, but stumbled back, shrieking with a bayonet through his neck, and Trent knew that he had killed. Mechanically, he stooped to pick up his rifle, but the bayonet was still in the man who lay, beating with red hands against the sod. It sickened him, and he leaned on the cannon. Men were fighting all around him now, and the air was foul with smoke and sweat. Somebody seized him from behind and another in front, but others in turn seized them or struck them with solid blows. The click, click, click of bayonets infuriated him, and he grasped the rammers and struck out blindly until it was shivered to pieces. A man threw his arms around his neck and bore him into the ground, but he throttled him and raised him on his knees. He saw a comrade seize the cannon and fall across it with his skull crushed in. He saw the colonel tumble clean out of his saddle into the mud. Then consciousness fled. When he came to himself, he was lying on the embankment among the twisted rails. On every side huddled men who cried out and cursed and fled away into the fog, and he staggered to his feet and followed them. Once he stopped to help a comrade with a bandaged jaw who could not speak but clung to his arm for a time, and then fell dead into the freezing mire. And again he aided another who groaned, "Traite-moi, Philippe!" until a sudden volley in the mist relieved him of his charge. An icy wind swept down the heights, cutting the fog into shreds. For an instant, with an evil leer, the sun peered through the naked woods of Vincennes, sank like a blood clot in the battery smoke, lower, lower into the blood-soaked plain. Very simple to add Philippe, add the comrade from Beaux Arts, and then kill them. Very simple. Give a name to the person dead, introduce them a page earlier. Very simple. Effective. I don't care about these characters. I'm not sad by these characters, but putting a face to a name allows you to see Trent try to help them because he knows them and fail. Very simple. Do this in your TTRPGs. Do this in your writing. Where a piece of advice I had recommended to me: whenever you refer to a character, give them a name. Suddenly, that will populate your world much more. Now, the colonel did not have a name, and I was confused about the colonels because there was like 4 colonels, and there was like a captain or whatever. But just like the guy behind me didn't get a name, but I knew him as like the associate from Beaux Arts. Philippe, random guy I spoke to one time. I know he's Philippe. This seems like a good depiction of the horrors. I'm not going to pretend like I know. I'm not going to pretend like I've been in a war zone, let alone a 1870s war zone, right? I'm not going to pretend like I know what it's like, but this feels scary, chaotic, oppressive, overwhelming. All terrible things, which war is. War is terrible. Not heroic, not victorious. It is half of them died before getting to the front line because of a fight in front of them. They got hit by crossfire. That's how it goes. Yeah, it gets the point across. When midnight sounded from the belfry of Saint-Sulpice, the gates of Paris were still choked with fragments of what had once been an army. They entered with the night, a sullen horde, splattered with slime, faint with hunger and exhaustion. There was little disorder at first, and the throng at the gates parted silently as the troops tramped along the freezing streets. Confusion came as the hours passed. Swiftly and more swiftly, crowding squadron after squadron, battery on battery, horses plunging and caissons jolting, the remnants from the front surged through their gates, a chaos of cavalry and artillery struggling for the right of way. Close upon them stumbled the infantry. Here a skeleton of a regiment marching with a desperate attempt at order. There a riotous mob of mobiles crushing their way to the streets. Then a turmoil of horsemen, cannon, troops without officers, officers without men. Then again a line of ambulances, the wheels groaning under their heavy loads. Dumb with misery, the crowd looked on. All through the day, the ambulances had been arriving, and all day long, the ragged throng whimpered and shivered by the barriers. At noon, the crowd was increasing tenfold, filling the squares about the gate and swarmed over the inner fortifications. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the German batteries suddenly wreathed themselves in smoke, and the shells fast fell on Montparnasse. At 20 minutes after 4, two projectiles struck a house in Rue de Boc, and a moment later, the first shell fell in the Latin Quarter. Braith was painting in bed when West came in very much scared. "I wish you would come down. Our house has been knocked into a cocked hat, and I'm afraid that some of the pillagers may take into our heads to pay us a visit tonight." Braith jumped out of bed and bundled himself in a garment which had once been an overcoat. "Anybody hurt?" he inquired, struggling with a sleeve full of dilapidated lining. No. Colette is barricaded in the cellar, and the concierge ran away to the fortifications. There'll be a rough gang there if the bombardment keeps up. You might help us. Of course, said Braith, but it was not until they had reached the Rue Serpent and had turned into the passage which led to West's cellar that the latter cried, "Have you seen Jack Trent today?" No, replied Braith, looking troubled. He was not at ambulance headquarters. He stayed to take care of Sylvia, I suppose. A bomb came crashing through the roof of a house at the end of the alley, and it burst into the basement, showering the street with slate and plaster. A second struck a chimney and plunged into the garden, followed by an avalanche of bricks, and another exploded with a deafening report in the next street. They hurried along the passage to the steps which led to the cellar. Here again, Braith stopped. Don't you think I'd better run to see if Jack and Sylvia were well entrenched? I can get back before dark. No, go in and find Colette, and I'll go. No, let me go. There's no danger. I know it, replied West calmly, and dragging Braith into the alley, pointed to the cellar steps. The iron door was barred. Colette, he called. The door swung inward. The girl sprang up the steps to meet them. At that instant, Braith, glancing behind him, gave a startled cry, pushing the two before him into the cellar, jumped down after them, and slammed the iron door. A few seconds later, a heavy jar from the outside shook the hinges. They're here, muttered West, very pale. That door, observed Colette calmly, will hold forever. Braith examined the low iron structure, now trembling with the blows rained on it from without. West glanced anxiously at Colette, who displayed no agitation, and this comforted him. I don't believe they'll spend much time here, said Braith. They only rummage in cellars for spirits, I imagine. Unless they hear the valuables are buried there. But surely nothing's buried here, exclaimed Braith uneasily. Unfortunately there is, growled West. That miserly landlord of mine. A crash from outside followed by a yell cut him short. Then blow after blow shook the doors until there came a sharp snap, a clinking of metal, and a triangular bit of iron fell inwards, leaving a hole through which struggled a ray of light. Instantly West knelt, and shoving his revolver through the aperture, fired every cartridge. For a moment, the alley resounded the racket of a revolver, then absolute silence followed. Presently, a single questioning blow fell upon the door, and a moment later another, and suddenly there was a crack zigzagged across the iron plate. Here, said West, seizing Colette by the wrist. You follow me. Braith? And he ran swiftly towards a circular spot of light at the further end of the cellar. The spot of light came from a barred manhole above. West motioned Braith to mount his shoulders. Push it over. You must. With little effort, Braith lifted the barred cover, scrambled out onto his stomach, and easily raised Colette from West's shoulders. Quick, old chap, cried the latter. Braith twisted his legs around a chain fence and leaned down again. The cellar was flooded with yellow light, and the air reeked with the stench of petroleum torches. The iron door still held, but a whole metal plate was gone, and now as they looked, a figure came creeping over through holding a torch. Quick, whispered Braith, jump! And West hung dangling until Colette grasped him by the collar and he was dragged out. Then her nerves gave way and she wept hysterically, but West threw his arms around her and led her across the garden into the next street, where Braith, after replacing the manhole cover and piling some stone slabs from the wall over it, rejoined them. It was almost dark. They hurried through the street, now only lighted by burning buildings or the swift glare of the shells. They gave wide berth to fires, but at distance saw the flitting forms of pillagers among the debris. Sometimes they passed a female fury crazed with drink, shrieking anathemas across the world, or some slouching lout whose blackened face and hands betrayed his share of the work of the destruction. At last they reached the Seine and passed the bridge, and then Braith said, I must go back. I'm not sure of Jack and Sylvia. As he spoke, he made way for a crowd which came trampling across the bridge and along the river wall by the d'Orsay barracks. In the midst of it, West caught the measured tread of the platoon. A lantern passed, a file of bayonets, then another lantern which glimmered on a deathly face behind, and Colette gasped, Hardman! And he was gone. They peered fearfully across the embankment, holding their breath. There was a shuffle of feet on the quay, and the gate of the barracks slammed. A lantern shone for a moment at the postern. The crowd pressed to the grill, then came the clang of the volley from the stone parade. Shivering, whimpering, and groaning, Chambers is freaky. He do be kind of freaky. One by one, the petroleum torches flared up along the embankment, and now the whole squadron was in motion. Down from the Champs-Élysées and across the Place de la Concorde straggled the fragments of the battle, a company here and a mob there. They poured in from every street, followed by women and children, and a great murmur borne on the icy wind swept through the Arc de Triomphe and down their dark avenue. Perdis, Perdis! A ragged end of a battalion was pressing past. The specter of annihilation. West groaned. Then a figure sprang from the shadowy ranks and called West's name, and when he saw it, it was Trent. He cried out. Trent seized him, white with terror. Sylvia?
West stared speechless, but Colette moaned, oh, Sylvia, they're shelling the quarter. Trent, shouted Braith, but he was gone, and they could not overtake him. The bombardment ceased as Trent crossed the Boulevard Saint-Germain, but the entrance to the Rue de Seine was blocked by a heap of smoking bricks. Everywhere the shells had torn great holes in the pavement. The cafe was wrecked of splinters and grass, the bookstore tottered, ripped from roof to basement, and the little bakery, long since closed, bulged outward above a mass of slate and tin, which these stores were referenced in the Street of Four Winds. Which my assumption is that the final 4 stories are all the Street of X. And I imagine these are all at the same time taking place, because the other guy mentioned being in the Latin Quarter. And these people are obviously in the Latin Quarter, and I picked up on that when they mentioned that earlier, but wow. Yeah, like, it's so weird, because like I'm assuming that the cafe and the bookstore and the bakery are the same ones referenced in the previous story, which is just a nice bit of consistency. Arrow would livestream reading Act 2 just to inflict madness and despair upon Rory when he wandered in. No, I would get Rory on a private call for that. I would make him go mad privately. I would drive him crazy. I think Hartman just got executed by fire. What? In the midst of it, West caught the measured tread of a platoon, a lantern passed, a file bayonets, then another lantern which glimmered on a deathly face behind, and Colette gasped, Hartman, and he was gone? I thought he was like conscripted. I thought he was forced to fight alongside them. No? This took a turn. No, this is not what I was expecting at all, and I'm loving it. You want to hear a great example of drive us mad, mafia mommy dies? Yeah, that's about it. What I want to say is that this is a perfect example. Do you remember my video the other day, earlier this week, about downtime between hunts in Kane? This is that. This is the first 2 sections of this was a sitcom that we were making jokes about how it's like a polycule yowie. And then there was like, oh no, you're not the father, he's the father. Like, hard pivot into a war drama, right? This has been the most all over the place story narratively. And I'm loving it. Because it doesn't feel disconnected. It feels like the slice of life aspect, the sitcom aspect, enhances the horror of the war. Right? The fact that I read the Street of Four Winds built into this, which gave me a bit of context for the Latin Quarter. That was a very small scale, weirdo story of a guy talking to a cat. And it built up this a bit. All of these stories up until now have had this kind of... I swear, I think that my model is freaking out because there's light on my face. I think that the fact that the light outside is directly on my face is messing with my tracking. I'm very much enjoying this. Where did I go? Trent sees in white with terror. Sylvia? West stared speechless, but Colette moaned, oh, Sylvia, they're shelling the quarter. Trent, shouted Braith, but he was gone, and they could not overtake him. The bombardment ceased as Trent crossed the Boulevard Saint-Germain, but the entrance to the Rue de Seine was blocked by a heap of smoking bricks. Everywhere the shells had torn great holes in the pavement. The cafe was a wreck of splinters and glass, the bookstore tottered, ripped from roof to basement, and the little bakery, long since closed, bulged outward above a mass of slate and tin. He climbed over the steaming bricks and hurried into the Rue de Tournon. On the corner, a fire blazed, lighting up his own street. And on the blank wall, beneath a shattered gas lamp, a child was writing with a bit of cinder. Here fell the first shell. The letter stared him in the face. The rat killer finished. It's the rat killer. The rat killer finished and stepped back to view his work, but catching sight of Trent's bayonet, screamed and fled, and as Trent staggered across the shattered street, from holes and crannies in the ruins, fierce women fled from their work of pillage, cursing him. At first he could not find his house, for the tears blinded him, but he felt along the wall and reached for the door. A lantern burned in the concierge's lodge, and the old man lay dead beside it. Faint with fright, he leaned a moment on his rifle, then snatched the lantern, sprang up the stairs.
He tried to call, but his tongue hardly moved. On the second floor, he saw plaster on the stairway, and on the third, the floor was torn, and the concierge lay in a pool of blood across the landing. The next floor was his. Theirs. The door hung from its hinges, the walls gaped. He crept in and sank down by the bed, and their 2 arms were flung around his neck, and a tear-stained face sought his own. Sylvia! Oh, Jack! 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 From the tumbled pillow beside them, a child wailed. They brought it. It is mine, she sobbed. Ours, he whispered, with his arms around them both. Then, from the stairs below, came Braith's anxious voice. Trent! Is all well? What? What? Okay. First off, Sylvia survived. Was not expecting that. First off, Sylvia, when they made the comment of just like, oh, here's as safe as over there, or like there's as safe as here, I assumed the house was getting bombed. And I was right. Wasn't expecting Sylvia to survive? That's so pog. I wasn't expecting Trent to survive when he went off to war either. And I do have a question though. With the child. The child is Sylvia's? Sylvia birthed the child, but was not pregnant? I'm a bit confused on that one, because they brought her the child. When Trent spoke with Southwalk, you know the child is at his room, get it and take it to my own apartment. How did he wind up with the child? How did Hartwood? Yeah, how did Hartman, how did he get the child if Sylvia's the one that birthed it? Unless this is like Mpreg. Will the polykill survive the coming battle? Will West be set to the Soderbrücken? Find out next time on The King and the Yellow. Literally. I love how the story's a soap opera rom-com so far with weird horror of the early stories, and then it has a full-on actual war. Now we're actually worried about the polykill. Exactly. Who cares whose child it is? Get out of the war zone. No, I care. I need to know, is Hartman the father? Because yes, apparently he is. But how did Sylvia not have the child? Trent and Sylvia are characters in Chambers' book before this and his first book in the Quarter. Ah. Yeah, so someone mentioned that earlier, is that the final couple books are about, the final couple stories are about characters in his books, which is just real pog. So, Sylvia was with Hartman. Is this a nightmare child somehow? Also, Chambers is a romance author. His King in Yellow is actually the weird stuff. His King in Yellow is actually not the normal that he does. So, Sylvia was with the F-boy Hartman, got pregnant, had baby. Trent didn't know it wasn't his because they're married. Trent doesn't love Sylvia. They get married. Sylvia loves Trent. Trent is supportive of Sylvia kissing Colette, because why not? So was it a situation where Hartman slept with Sylvia, then Sylvia got her heart broken, met, and very quickly, like within 6 months, presumably, or within 9 months, I suppose, married Trent. Trent then slept with her. She got pregnant, had a kid. He assumed it was his. She never told him it was Hartman's. They gave the child to the ambulance, to the American litigation. Probably because they couldn't support it, is my guess. I'm assuming. And then they got the child back? No, the child was with Hartman. Why was the child with Hartman? Yeah. Southwick, help me now. You know the story from the Blackguard. You know the child is at his room. I think she had the kid with Hartman, and then they got... Oh, no. So
she had a kid with Hartman, birthed the child, then left him for Trent. Didn't tell Trent. Interesting. You can see how Chambers' work impacted early romance and soap opera. No, literally, I was not expecting him to like actually be good. Full stop. Like when I started this, I expected him to be kind of bad. I expected this to be like weirdo. I expected this to not be very good. And I'm pleasantly surprised. Of these stories, let me go up to... Right, Hartman. He said he didn't care whether Hartman... Bro, I was so locked in. So we have read The Street of the First Shell. It's the first... Understood. Our Lady of the Fields. This one is like 50 pages long. So that one's going to be like probably all of next week's stream. And then Rubery. We're almost done with King in Yellow. This has been 4 streams to date. We're going to have stream 5, maybe stream 6. Might just do stream 5. I'm loving this. Oh my gosh. I was not expecting this to be so good. I would unironically, The Street of the First Shell, I think I liked it more than The Mask. Right? Yeah, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna say current order: Street of the First Shell, then The Mask, then Yellow Sign, then Repair of Reputations, Street of Four Winds, Demoiselle D, Court of the Dragon, Prophet's Paradise. That's my current ranking. Where should we send further suggestions for books? In the Discord, there's the suggestions channel. You can always just drop that there. I'm not going to worry about that until we get to like that final stream. Because as long as it is public domain, the reason I'm doing King in Yellow is because it was published in 1895. That is public domain. That is Creative Commons. I'm allowed to do whatever I want with it, which is why I can read through it. You can't recommend anything, I think, more recent than 1925 is I believe. It might be like 1930, but... so please keep that in mind. It has to be like 19th century or very early 20th century. And yeah. And it doesn't even have a single mention. It doesn't even have a single mention of the King in Yellow. Really, the only mentions of King in Yellow were Repair of Reputations, Mask, Court of the Dragon, Yellow Sign. All of the others didn't really have it. Gosh, I just read like 70 pages today. Nice. Because Prophet's Paradise, Street of Four Winds, and Street of the First Shell. Yeah. I'm loving this. I'm having much more fun with this than I thought I would. The next work, really, The Street of Our Fair Lady of the Fields. I think the two I was told going into this, like I was told by a comment, if you're not going to read all of them, read The Mask and read The Street of Our Lady of the Field. I believe those are the two. I know someone said The Mask is the best, and then someone said The Mask and One of the Streets was one of their favorites. If you want other Chambers book recommendations that you don't need to read on stream, let me know. He's your favorite romance author. Oh, I didn't know that. Honestly, I might. Like, unironic, like, I might. What would be really funny is if I did a Pride and Prejudice stream. Is there a significant difference between the first and third edition? Holy. That is 1923. That is 61 chapters. Gosh. Like I could read I could read 2 chapters a week. Oh, the chapters are really short. Okay. I could probably read like 4 to 5 chapters a week of Pride and Prejudice because 1813 public domain. And it would take me like over half a year. How are we feeling if I do like Pride and Prejudice at some point? I think this would be fun. Oh, by the way, after you finish the book in yellow, you could check out the King in Yellow video by Flawed Peacock.
The video is nearly 9 hours long and covers the entire book, not just the 4 weird horror stories. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, yeah. I'm going to go back and read the others because I caught this. So if you want, you can go back and watch the streams that we did. Those are all public streams where I just exactly how I read today. I went back and read them. So thank you all so much for swinging by. I have stuff to do. Tomorrow is going to be a Hollow Knight stream, ideally the final Hollow Knight stream over on Twitch, 11 a.m. PST. Timmer's book, The Hidden Children, is a supernatural romance fantasy novel. I might have to check that out. Too bad we can't join the Everjane community anymore. Shucks. Check me out on Twitch tomorrow for Hollow Knight. On Wednesday of next week, there's going to be a sponsored stream for a game. I'm going to be doing a game stream on YouTube. So it's not going to be as much yapping. Depending on what my schedule looks like, I might feel bad and I might give you a free yapping stream. I might try out vertical yapping, a vertical stream next week. So look out for that. But in the meantime, thank you all so much. Have fun preparing for Kane Horrors. Thank you, B. You should read my weird fiction story I wrote. It's only 6 chapters. I unfortunately don't take viewer original works unless it's like a published work. My apologies. But thank you so much. Have a lovely day, night, evening, whenever. If you are a VOD watcher, thank you so much. If you are here in the live, thank you so much. And be on the lookout for potentially the end of The King in Yellow next week. Realistically, it probably won't be because I have 2 long stories to go through, but it might. Who knows? Enjoy yourself. Bye-bye.